Chapter 4186. But for Yi Qian and the others, their skin would not be in good condition all year round. In Su Wen's words, other than their breasts, there was not a single part of their bodies that was in good condition. Li Jinyan saw the bruises on Yi Qian's calves and arms, and the already cold atmosphere became even colder. It was so cold that Yi Qian panicked. She thought that her brother had discovered something. Don't think too much. Xia Jinyuan chuckled softly. Why are you all so timid? Something else is making Big Bro feel bad. That's good, that's good. As soon as Yi Qian heard that it was not about the two of them sleeping together, the caution on her face disappeared. She walked over and said to Li Jinyan, Brother, why are you in a bad mood? Did you talk to him just now? Can you talk to me about it? Li Jinyan glanced at the guy sitting next to his sister, then looked at Yi Qian. The cold atmosphere became warmer. You don't want to sleep? You really came over to chat with us? I slept too much, so I wanted to chat. What did you guys talk about just now? The atmosphere is a little off. You're not talking about me, are you? Did I make the two captains angry? Yi Qian said with a smile. She only wanted to ease the gloomy atmosphere, but she ended up touching the ice. The atmosphere that had just been eased instantly became tense again. She saw the coldness in her brother's eyes, and it made her heart beat wildly. No way. You're really talking about me. I haven't had any problems recently. Yi Qian tried to explain herself. Facing the captains that she had trained so hard, even if one was her relative and the other was her boyfriend, she still maintained a proper attitude. She did not speak casually just because of their relationship. A general was a general, and a soldier was a soldier. Since they were talking about serious matters, she had to act like a soldier. Her expression became serious. Xia Jinyuan held her hands that were on her knees and intertwined his fingers. He said softly, There are no problems. Very good. The devil and I have different opinions, so we can't come to an agreement. Q King, I don't want to talk about this anymore, Li Jinyan said coldly. I don't agree. Xia Jinyuan's gaze also turned cold. It's not a matter of whether you and I agree or not. It's just that we're forced by the situation, and it's not up to us to make a decision. In the end, it's up to her. I'm just suggesting I won't force her. After analyzing the pros and cons, the choice is in her hands. You have a great influence on my sister. My words may not be effective, but your words will definitely be effective. Since you brought it up, she knows that you must have thought it through carefully, otherwise you wouldn't have brought it up. You said that the choice was in my sister's hands, but in reality, from the moment you spoke, my sister had already made her choice. Xia Jinyuan's words were extremely incisive, as if they had dissected the essence of the matter. His handsome face was so cold that it was as if it was covered with a thin layer of ice. Under the ice, there was a bottomless abyss. No one knew what he was thinking. Sensing the tension, Yi Qian looked at the two of them and pursed her lips. I'm the person you're talking about, right? As the person involved, do I have the right to know? The two of you have said so much, but I'm the only one who doesn't know anything. Shouldn't the two of you tell me what's going on first? Yi Qian's voice was a little cold. They were talking among themselves, and she could listen without interrupting. But now that they were talking about her, and there was tension, she had the right to know. Li Jinyan could tell that his sister was a little angry, and he immediately regretted it. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down before saying, We were just talking about Uncle Chun, and he brought up a suggestion that I don't agree with. Chapter 4187. Principal Chun was a pain that Yi Qian could not bear to touch. Even though a few months had passed, his heart was still bleeding. Hearing this, Yi Qian's cold expression darkened a little. Say it, I'm listening. Don't argue, I have my own judgment. Whoever made the suggestion would naturally have to explain it to Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan looked at his brother-in-law, whose face was as cold as ice, and sighed in his heart as he slowly explained his suggestion to Yi Qian. He was her boyfriend, and as her boyfriend, how could he be willing to let his girlfriend suffer in a place where there was no warmth at all? As long as both of them lost their identities today, then if anyone dared to suggest that little fox go to Werui's Hell training camp, he would be the first to stand up and beat the crap out of that person. Even if it was only 2 months there, each day felt like a year. Every minute and every second was endured. But it was undeniable that as long as one endured it, their soul would be tempered, and they would be able to remain calm when faced with extremely challenging missions. Just like him, he had been in hiding for almost a year and a half. Even the cunning cobra did not know who shot him until he died. In a place where even the sun can't warm you up, as long as you step into the training camp, all your rights will be taken away. You will no longer be you, you are just a code name. You will only be you when you walk out of the training camp, and your code name will be changed to someone else. You can come into contact with top-notch weapons there. Other than internationally banned weapons, you can come into contact with anything that flies in the sky, swims in the sea, and runs on land. Currently, half of the visible snipers are from Werui's Hell training camp. There are also snipers who do not show up at all, but can kill when they make a move. They are like ghosts that serve their country. They carry out the highest level of missions. Sniper training is different from our training, but I don't know exactly how it is different. Only by going there can we find out what is different about the sniper's base. And I just told the Demon King that the person who killed Uncle Chun must be a world-class sniper. If we want to find the murderer as soon as possible, we might gain something by coming into contact with those top-notch snipers. More importantly, ignoring Li Jinyan's darkening face, Xia Jinyuan stared at his girl with dark eyes. More importantly, your sniping skills will be greatly improved. Yi Qian, when you meet the murderer one day, I only want you to win. Why did he send her to such a cruel place? Because he didn't want to lose her. He would rather be cruel now than have him regret it in the future. Yi Qian, who had never heard of Wei Rui's Hell training camp, was so shocked that even after Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, she was still in a daze. Who would have thought that such a gray area existed? A group of highly dangerous people could actually gather together to train together. Then when they meet on the battlefield, who will emerge victorious? Just like that, Xia Jinyuan opened a new door for Yi Qian to peek into a dark corner of the world. He let her know that there was such a place that was obviously illegal, but tacitly allowed to exist by various countries. Only then did she realize that the outside world was very wide, and there were too many things that she did not know about. I originally planned to wait until you graduated before mentioning Wei Rui's Hell training camp to you, but now it has been brought forward. If you have any ideas, you can tell us now. The Demon King and I are both here, so you can express your personal opinion. Xia Jinyuan added one last thing after he finished speaking. Li Jinyan said, "You can voice your thoughts and questions, but I don't recommend you make a decision immediately. There is still some time before summer vacation." Chapter 4188. Going to Wei Rui's Hell training wasn't a trivial matter. Xia Jinyuan could understand Li Jinyan's worries. Xia Jinyuan stared at her quietly and said, "It's a cold place where you can lose your life at any time. The cruel and inhumane training ground is a battlefield. High-risk groups undergo high-risk training. Although the rules state that you can't kill each other, you can only accept your fate if you lose your life during training. Most importantly, if you lose your life during training, you won't even be awarded a third-class merit, let alone a posthumous title of martyr. You're just a number there. The devil is right. Don't make a decision immediately. You can also ask us more about the Wei Rui Hell training camp. We'll give you a detailed answer for your reference." Yi Qian lowered her eyes slightly. She didn't dare to look at her brother, Li Jinyan, because she already had an answer in her heart. Her fear made Li Jinyan's heart sink. It fell into a bottomless abyss, and his eyes were filled with sadness. "I've been through this dark training, so I know how cruel it is. It wasn't easy to find you. Grandpa and Uncle finally have happiness on their faces. I really don't want to break this hard-won happiness." Li Jinyan didn't sit upright anymore. He leaned against the back of the sofa with his head raised. His chiseled jaw was tense, and his neck was so tense that the veins under his skin might have popped out. "Yi Qian, you're already a Special Forces soldier on high-risk missions. If you go through such inhumane, cruel training, what if something happens? Grandpa is old. He only hopes that his granddaughter and grandson will be safe and sound. Grandpa has been through too much. He lost several children when he was young, and then he was wrongly imprisoned. Later, when Grandma passed away, Although Grandpa didn't say anything, every incident was like gouging out Grandpa's heart. Sister, I'm just thinking about the possibility of something happening to you. My back is drenched in cold sweat. I can't imagine what would happen to Grandpa and Uncle if something really happened to you. I don't dare to think too deeply. I'm scared. Even if it was just his imagination, Li Jinyan was still afraid. How could he agree to let Yi Jian go to a place where she might not be able to return for training? He was afraid of even imagining it. Even if that place could greatly improve the abilities of a Special Forces soldier, he didn't want his sister to go there. He also knew how much influence Xia Jinyuan's words would have on his sister, so he did not vehemently object. In fact, he even asked his sister not to make a decision immediately and to consider it carefully. After hearing this, Xia Jinyuan pursed his lips into a straight line. Old Master Fu and his future father-in-law. These two elders were little Fox's closest kin. They were her deepest concerns, and the bond of blood ties could indeed cause her to think about retreating. If the little fox wanted to leave now, he would acquiesce. But before she entered the Snowfield Brigade, he would have her undergo training. If it wasn't the Demon King training camp, then it would be the Hell training camp. And he preferred the Hell training camp. Bai He, who had gone to the Hell training camp, was about to return after a year. When the time came, he could have a chat with little Fox. Xia Jinyuan pursed his lips into a faint smile. He said to his lover, who had been silent for a long time, "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you still thinking about what you want to ask? Don't worry, take your time. I don't need your answer right now." Chapter 4189. This time, Yi Qian didn't immediately agree. She lowered her head and nodded. She wasn't thinking about whether to agree or not, but how to reassure her brother. She had her own judgment. Through Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan's introduction of the gray area, Werui's Hell training camp, she knew how dangerous that place was. It was so dangerous that every training could lead to death. However, these are not enough reasons for her not to go. She really wanted to go, because there were world-class snipers training there, because she could come into contact with more world-class snipers there. And if she trained there, she might become a world-class sniper one day. Now, she was still a long way from becoming a world-class sniper. In the past 2 years, she felt that she had reached a bottleneck in sniping. She felt that she hadn't made any progress for a long time. It felt like she hadn't grasped any new knowledge for a long time. Although it was dangerous, it still deeply attracted her. She wanted to go. She really wanted to go. Her silence made the two captains from the Special Forces unable to guess what she was thinking. There was nothing else they could do but wait quietly. Xia Jinyuan naturally wouldn't persuade Yi Qian to go because he was still considering whether to let his beloved girl further her studies. If she went, he couldn't bear it. If she didn't go, he was afraid of losing her. Between the two, the latter was more important. In the end, the choice was in her hands. Whether she went or not, it was up to her. Let me think about it. Brother, you're right. Grandpa is old and can't take stimulation. If I really go, I can't guarantee that I'll be safe. If something happens to me, Grandpa won't be able to accept it. It's the same for Dad. Dad has been looking for my mom for more than 20 years. My mom left me to accompany my dad. If something happens to me, I'm afraid that my dad will leave with us. Yi Qian's answer didn't make Li Jinyan feel at ease. She heard Xia Jinyuan say that half of the visible snipers came from Werui's Hell training camp. Her eyes flashed with a meteor. Even if it was only for a short time, he saw it clearly. She made a note of it and would go. Li Jinyan, who was resting his head on the back of the sofa, stiffened his neck. After a long time, he said, "I can't stop you from going. Grandpa and Uncle who stayed in China can't stop you either. You're used to flying and there's good wind to help you. I know you want to go. Your eyes told me you want to go." Li Jinyan, who was not used to talking too much. He was a little tired and wanted to go back to his room. Li Jinyan sat up straight and calmly looked at his sister, who was starting to feel uneasy because of his words. The corners of his mouth twitched and he revealed a helpless, bitter smile. "Make your own decision. If you go, tell me. I'll go home and hide it from Grandpa and Uncle. Before you come back, I will protect Grandpa and Uncle's happiness until you come back." Yi Qian choked. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to avenge Uncle Chun so badly. I can't let the murderer go unpunished. Uncle Chun shouldn't have left like this. They're too cruel. They're too cruel. I want to find a murderer. I want to live with Grandpa, Dad, and all of you. If I want to live, I have to work harder. I'm also afraid of death. I'm also afraid that I'll never see you again. So I'll try my best to live. I won't let anything happen to me. Brother, just trust me this once. You train me. You should know that I can get through it. Chapter 4190. Yes, it's because I've trained you before. I know you can get through it, so I agreed. I'll take care of Grandpa and Uncle. Li Jinyan smiled bitterly and shook his head. His cold voice was full of helplessness. Actually, I can't take care of them much. Grandpa has always been taken care of by Uncle Fu, but now Grandpa has something to look forward to. He wants to see you and me return safely. Grandpa, who is used to waiting alone, and Uncle, who is used to researching in the base alone, their happiness is for you to come home safely. I just hope you remember that when you take revenge for Uncle Chun, don't forget that Grandpa and Uncle are still waiting for you to come home. I know. I'll always remember. I'll always remember. Brother, don't worry. I won't let Grandpa and Dad down, and I won't let you down either. Yi Qian's voice was choked with sobs, but she kept nodding and answering. She felt very guilty, but she had to persevere. I'll remember what you said today. I hope you'll remember it too. Li Jinyan stood up. He needed to be alone and didn't want to continue chatting for the time being. Just as Li Jinyan turned to leave, Xia Jinyuan, who had been quietly listening to the siblings' conversation, said in a deep voice, "Devil." Before Uncle Chun left, he told Yi Qian not to seek revenge for him. Why did Uncle Chun say that? Li Jinyan paused and stood with his back facing the two of them for a while. After a while, he clenched his fists and turned to look at Xia Jinyuan coldly. Because it's very dangerous. With my sister's current strength, it's not enough for her to seek revenge for him. That's right. That's why Yi Qian can only become stronger so that she can face unknown dangers. I know it's cruel, but compared to losing, I'd rather live a cruel life. I know. Good night. Li Jinyan answered him and said to Yi Qian, I'll send you to school tomorrow. Yi Qian only had time to say good night before he strode away. After the door closed, Xia Jinyuan hugged Yi Qian from behind and sighed. I've offended brother-in-law. Sigh. I need to think of a way to make it up to him. You can't. When you spoke just now, my brother probably wanted to kill you. Yi Jian caressed his handsome face. Her choked voice was filled with melancholy. Brother did it for my own good. He knew it was dangerous there and was afraid that something would happen to me. That's why he wanted to stop me. But he also knew that if he really stopped me, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Between fear and regret, I chose fear. Fear was only half a year, but regret would last a lifetime, and there was no hope. Xia Jinyuan hugged Yi Qian's slender waist tightly from behind. He arched his body and rested his chin on her neck without saying a word. The two of them stood and hugged each other. The atmosphere in the room was so tranquil that they didn't want to disturb it. After some time, Xia Jinyuan's deep voice sounded a little strange. It sounded like a broken string, making one's heart feel heavy. This path is too difficult, but I won't let go. I'll always hold on to you. No matter how hard or tiring it is, I won't let go. Then don't let go. Just hold on to me tightly and tell me how to go from time to time. Captain Xia, I've been through so much just to be by your side. If you let go, what should I do? She said in a low voice, tugging at the strings in his heart. He trembled, bowed to her every word, and was moved. I won't let go. Once I hold on to you, I'll hold on to you tightly for the rest of my life. I won't let go of your hand. He kissed her neck gently. A transparent drop of water quietly dripped onto her collar without Yi Qian noticing. It didn't even leave a mark. Chapter 4191. Who didn't want to live a peaceful life? Who didn't want to be together forever? Who wanted to get hurt? Who wanted to have an uncertain return date? No one wanted that. However, there were always people who had to do things, complete them, and carry them on their shoulders. These people were people dressed in olive green. Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan, and Li Jinyan belonged to this category. Because they understood each other, they could understand each other. No matter how worried they would feel relieved when it was time to let go. After Xia Jinyuan sent Yi Qian back to room 1601 to rest, he sat quietly by the bed. After a long time, he took out his phone and sent a text message. It was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. After sending the text message, Xia Jinyuan put his phone under the quilt and lay down on the bed with his arms and legs spread out. He closed his eyes, and his elegant and handsome face was slightly serious. Less than a minute after the text message was sent, the phone on the quilt vibrated. Xia Jinyuan didn't open his eyes. He reached his long hand under the quilt and felt the phone in his hand before opening his eyes to see who was calling. "Dad, why haven't you gone to bed yet? I received your text as soon as I got back to the villa complex." Commander-in-Chief Xia took off his military cap and put on the coat rack. He motioned for the guard to pour him a glass of water and walked straight to the living room sofa to sit down. "Your decision was very sudden. Tell me the reason." Xia Jinyuan sat up and said in a low voice, "Dad, why haven't you made any progress after arresting someone?" Yi Qian didn't inform her because he thought he didn't get any useful information. It doesn't suit your style of doing things. If you didn't get any information, you would have informed her instead of not mentioning it at all. As a son, he knew his father well. What Yi Qian thought, Xia Jinyuan didn't think so. Although he said he didn't get any information, he had already planned to ask when he returned to the capital. Now, he came to ask in advance. Commander-in-Chief Xia took the glass of water handed to him by the guard. He raised his head and drank more than half of the glass in one go. He put down the glass and pondered for a while before saying calmly, "There is a problem, but we didn't get any useful information. Someone in the underworld is willing to pay for the Zhou family's life, no matter who it is. Now that we've found this person, the trail has been cut short." In other words, Xiaoye's suspicions are not valid. The two cases are not the same group of people. He is still being held captive. As for when he will be released, I don't know. I didn't tell Xiaoye because... Commander-in-Chief Xia paused slightly, sighed, and said, "The military has always been protecting Principal Chun. Who would have thought that something would happen right under their noses?" Old 6. The military can't give Xiaoye an explanation. I don't know how to communicate with Xiaoye either. You're her boyfriend. You're the most suitable person to communicate with her and console her. The military would definitely catch the culprit. No matter what price they had to pay, they would bring the culprit back to the country. Tell little Yi not to worry about this. This was the promise that Commander-in-Chief Xia made to Yi Qian on behalf of the military. Xia Jinyuan murmured an "okay," and then asked about the text message he sent. "You can arrange my arrangements. If she wants to improve her sniping skills, she has to go to a more brutal place to receive training." "Is that the only reason?" Commander-in-Chief Xia asked. "No. Since the culprit who killed Uncle Chun is also a world-class sniper, Yi Qian has to improve her own ability if she wants to take revenge. That's the first reason. Second, half of the world-class snipers currently come from Wei Rui's Hell training camp. Since the culprit is also a world-class sniper, Yi Qian might be able to gain something after going there. Third, I don't want anything to happen to her." Chapter 4192. There was silence on the other end of the phone, and there was no reply for a long time. Xia Jinyuan, who had always been patient, waited quietly. This kind of decision could not be made in an instant. Tonight, he only told his father about his and Yi Qian's future plans. He did not expect to get his father's approval immediately. As expected, Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had been silent for a long time, said, "Even if Xiaoye agrees, the military still needs to consider carefully before making a decision. It's not easy to train a female Special Forces soldier, especially since Xiaoye is extremely talented. The military is still waiting for her to come out and give her important tasks. I can't give you an answer now." "I know. I just wanted to tell you that you can discuss it with Major General Yang and the other chiefs. Whether she can go or not is not up to us. It's mainly up to the military. It's late. You should rest early. Good night." "Good night." After ending the call, Commander-in-Chief Xia drank another mouthful of water. He placed his phone and cup on the coffee table and sat quietly alone. His expression was a little dignified, and no one knew what he was thinking. At 5 o'clock the next morning, Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, and Li Jinyan opened their rooms almost at the same time. They were all wearing the same short-sleeved shirt and shorts. The three of them looked at each other. Yi Qian took the lead and said, "Good morning." Only then did Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan say, "Good morning." The three of them, who were used to waking up early, went into the elevator together, finished a 10-kilometer morning run together, and returned to the hotel, drenched in sweat. It was 7 o'clock when they sat down at the hotel's restaurant for breakfast. There were not many guests in the restaurant. The three of them each took their own breakfast, chose a table in the corner, and sat down to eat together. The three of them did not talk during the meal. They maintained the discipline of the military until the meal was over. In public, the three of them avoided talking about the military and only talked about their daily lives. After chatting for a while, they realized that the three of them did not have anything good to talk about. They spent all their time in the military. What were the topics of their daily lives? Nothing. Yi Qian simply talked about some of the interesting things she encountered during her training and the difficulties she encountered in her studies. She was not good at chatting, and as they chatted, the three of them fell silent again. They looked at each other. In the end, even Li Jinyan, who didn't like to smile, couldn't help but rub his forehead and say, "Let's talk in the room. It's not convenient here." He and Xia Jinyuan were used to talking about the military, so it was not suitable for them to talk about military matters in the restaurant. As for life, there was nothing to talk about. "Let's go back to the room. I was so pissed off by the two of you last night that I forgot to mention something." When Yi Qian heard this, he immediately apologized. "There is no right or wrong, only choice. You return to school at 2 o'clock. You have to go to the hospital later, right? Let's go to the hospital together after we're done talking." Li Jinyan stood up and walked in front of them. His little sister was all grown up. She even had to make eye contact with Xia Jinyuan from time to time during breakfast. As her brother, he had become a third wheel. He might as well go back to his room and talk about serious matters. Li Jinyan knew that he had become a third wheel between the two of them, but he never thought of leaving. Xia Jinyuan hadn't seen Yi Qian in a long time, and he hadn't seen Yi Qian in a long time. To leave and leave the two of them alone? Sorry, he couldn't do it. Xia Jinyuan, who was a few steps behind, quickly reached out and grabbed Yi Qian's hand. He whispered teasingly, "When Big Brother finds a girlfriend in the future, I plan to follow him." Chapter 4193. Narrow-minded. Yi Qian knew why the man next to him said that. It was because Xia Jinyuan had been with her all this time, so Xia Jinyuan didn't have the chance to be alone with her. "It's not easy for my brother to find a girlfriend. If you dare to be like this, I'll ignore you," she said with a smile, especially when she glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. That glance was like rippling water, and it made Xia Jinyuan's heart itch. He wanted to kiss her. Comrade Xia Jinyuan, who had always been a man of action, looked around. There were more customers in the restaurant now, and there were a few gazes that fell on them. They didn't fall on him and Li Jinyan, but all of them fell on his girlfriend. When the narrow-minded Xia Jinyuan saw this, he immediately changed his mind. He was about to kiss Yi Qian when no one was looking. Instead of secretly holding Yi Qian's hand, he openly put his arm around Yi Qian's shoulder. "What are you looking at? He's already taken. It's him." When he put his arm around Yi Qian, it made Yi Qian jump in fright. Yi Qian didn't struggle and only whispered, "Aren't you afraid that my brother will punish you?" "I'm not afraid. Brother-in-law knows about our relationship." Xia Jinyuan looked at his brother-in-law, who was walking in front of him, and deliberately slowed down his footsteps. He narrowed the distance between them from a few steps to 2 meters. He said, "Not only do I want to hug you, I want to kiss you." He was really kissing her, and he didn't kiss her on the face or forehead, but directly on the lips. The few gazes that fell on Yi Qian disappeared. The men in casual clothes retracted their gazes and no longer looked at the beautiful girl who made their eyes light up. He lowered his head and kissed her. Yi Qian widened his eyes, not because he was frightened by the kiss, but because his brother, who was walking in front of him, turned around. At this moment, his face was as gloomy as water, and he stared coldly at the back of Captain Xia's head. If sight was a bullet, Captain Xia's entire skull would have been blown to smithereens by Big Brother. Xia Jinyuan felt a chill run down his spine. He straightened up and continued to hold Yi Qian's shoulder. He looked back at his brother-in-law calmly and smiled elegantly. Li Jinyan narrowed his eyes, warning Xia Jinyuan not to push his luck. After receiving the warning, Xia Jinyuan hugged Yi Qian tightly and calmly walked over. Then he smiled and said, "I couldn't help it. Big Brother, when you find a girlfriend in the future, you'll definitely understand why I was so impulsive. My surname is Li, and yours is Xia. I don't dare to be called Big Brother by you." As he spoke, Li Jinyan's gaze was like an iron nail. It went straight for Xia Jinyuan's hand, which was wrapped around Yi Qian's shoulder. It was so hard that Xia Jinyuan felt the back of his hand hurt a little. Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled. She didn't mind being kissed by Captain Xia in a place where there were people around. Seeing his brother's gloomy face, Yi Qian smiled and said, "Brother, let's go. They're blocking the aisle of the restaurant." "Girls, outside." Big Brother Li Jinyan was flustered. His sister didn't have any objections. What else could he say? No, he still had to say it. Don't push it too far. Don't push it too far. After receiving his brother's reminder, Yi Qian smiled and said, I definitely won't let him push it too far. If he dares to be unruly, isn't he still the big brother? Really? Aren't you afraid that I'll beat him up? No. Stubborn. Li Jinyan couldn't do anything about Yi Qian. He smiled and glared at her before taking the initiative to walk in front of her. Chapter 4194. Li Jinyan, who had his biological mother's protection, had indeed spent a carefree time when he was young. After his mother passed away, old Madame Xiao Li's claws were revealed. Without his mother's protection, he became like a weed. Old Madame Xiao Li would pluck the tender leaves today and pinch them the next day. Less than half a year after his mother's death, Li Jinyan no longer had a smile on his face. Fortunately, he was smart. As a child, he could see the viciousness beneath old Madame Li's kind face. In addition, from time to time, he would suffer in front of Du Jiai and her siblings. Li Jinyan's temperament grew colder, and he became more and more taciturn. It wasn't until his biological father married another stepmother that Li Jinyan basically shut himself in his room, except when he would show up for meals. Later, when he was a boarding student in junior high school, Li Jinyan's temperament was cultivated. He was used to being indifferent and even cold-blooded. If it weren't for old Madame Fu, who was still alive, visiting from time to time, old Master Fu, who often wrote letters, and Uncle Fu Yuxing and old Madame Fu, who personally brought him back to the Fu family, Li Jinyan, who was used to being alone, probably wouldn't have even stepped into the Fu family's house. Li Jinyan, who lost his home when he was young, received all the love from the Fu family's elders. He gave all the warmth he had to the Fu family. Now, he had a younger sister, Yi Qian. Although he wasn't good at expressing himself, he used his own way to protect Yi Qian. He felt that his younger sister, Yi Qian, was still young and should be taken care of. He couldn't let Xia Jinyuan take advantage of her. He had always thought this way, but he couldn't resist Yi Qian's love. Seeing that she didn't resist Xia Jinyuan's intimacy, Li Jinyan didn't try to stop them. He couldn't be like the Queen Mother of Heaven and force the two of them apart. Appropriate intimacy was fine, but nothing else. Back in the room, Li Jinyan said to the two of them seriously, "Uncle and grandfather don't want you to get married and have children too early. The two of you have to know your limits when you're together." This sentence was to remind the two of them. She then turned to Xia Jinyuan and said, "You are 6 years older than my sister, and you know more than her. I hope you can think for her and not affect her because of your momentary greed. You're experienced with the discipline of the military academy, so I won't say too much. I have no objection to the two of you being together, but if my sister gets hurt because of your momentary lust, Xia Jinyuan, even if I have to be the bad guy, I will stop you two from being together. A man who doesn't care about the big picture because of his greed for pleasure and doesn't think about the future is not worth entrusting your life to." At first, Yi Qian blushed, but slowly, she suppressed her shyness and listened attentively. She knew that her brother said this for her sake. On the other hand, Xia Jinyuan listened even more attentively. He had to listen to his brother-in-law's words. His brother-in-law's face had already darkened when he secretly kissed Yi Qian. If he didn't listen now, he would definitely be kicked out of the room. He said, "I've waited for her for so many years. I won't ruin our lives because of one moment. You, old master, and Uncle Fu can rest assured about this. Grandfather has always trusted you." Uncle didn't say it, but since he didn't stop you from dating my sister, he and grandfather both think that you're worth entrusting your life to. Me? You've been up to too many tricks in front of me. I'll take a wait-and-see attitude for now. Li Jinyan glanced at Xia Jinyuan, who he thought was dishonest, and changed the topic. He didn't give Xia Jinyuan a chance to explain himself. Chapter 4195. Comrade Xia thought about it and decided not to explain. He suddenly understood why his brother-in-law's expression was so gloomy when he saw him being intimate with Little Fox. It was just like when Ho Zi and Xia Yiwei were dating. Every time he saw Ho Zi, who was still a hooligan at the time, holding Xia Yiwei's hand, he wanted to secretly take a stick and break Ho Zi's hand. Why did he have such thoughts? It was probably because he felt that Ho Zi was bullying Xia Yiwei. His brother-in-law's current state of mind was probably similar to his at the time. He wasn't against it, but he just didn't like it. Now, his brother-in-law also didn't like it. It didn't matter. He just had to get used to it. After listening to his brother-in-law's lecture, Comrade Xia nodded to show that he understood. However, he didn't let go of Yi Qian's hand. Li Jinyan, who was trying to change the topic, saw this. Although the corners of his mouth were still pressed tightly, he still endured it. The Li family didn't stop after Li Chuhai's death. "Old man, Li has been investigating the cause of Li Chuhai's death. I know that Li Chuhai was Ant's murderer, so I've been paying attention to the Li family's movements. At the end of last year, I returned to the Li family and found out that old man Li used his old connections to investigate Li Chuhai's death. You guys have to be careful. Don't let the Li family catch on to anything." Old man Li knew that Li Chuhai had been killed, but he didn't know where or who killed him. Therefore, when he returned home at the end of last year, he didn't immediately tell Xia Jinyuan. Of course, at that time, he couldn't find Xia Jinyuan or Yi Qian. Yi Qian's pupils constricted when he didn't tell old man Li in advance. No one knew better than her who killed Li Chuhai, because she was the one who killed her enemy. Then, has old Master Li found anything yet? Yi Qian clenched his left hand and pretended to ask casually, "I don't think he found anything. Li Chuhai's death is a military secret. Very few people know about it. Old man Li probably couldn't find anything." Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan did not notice Yi Qian's strange behavior immediately. Xia Jinyuan said, "I know that Li Chuhai escaped, but I don't know who killed him. When I was still in China, I once thought about killing Li Chuhai with Yi Qian, but considering that Li Chuhai might recognize us, I gave up on the idea. Why would old Master Li use his connections to investigate a criminal who deserves to be punished? Why? Could it be that he wants to avenge Li Chuhai?" Yi Qian pursed his lips slightly. She and her comrades from the Snowfield Brigade carried out the mission to kill Li Chuhai. The person who killed Li Chuhai was none other than her. When they carried out the mission, Captain Xia was also overseas. Captain Xia, who did not participate in the mission, naturally did not know. The pigeons who carried out the mission with her could not have told Captain Xia about their mission, since it was a military secret. Even if Captain Xia was the team leader, she could not tell. Li Jinyan said coldly. That's what he thought. Otherwise, he wouldn't have investigated. I now suspect that old man Li knows that the military is investigating Li Chuhai because of Ant. If he continues to follow this lead, he will find out about Yi Qian sooner or later. When that time comes, it's not impossible that he will take his anger out on Yi Qian. Yi Qian, keep an eye on Shuka village. See if there are any strangers who have entered the village to inquire about Ant. Xia Jinyuan, please ask the commander-in-chief to check if anyone leaked the information. I'm more than 70% sure that old man Li already knows the cause of Li Chuhai's death. Chapter 4196. This news made Xia Jinyuan's eyes darken. Okay, I'll get the higher-ups to investigate immediately. But the net is too big, so we can't rule out the possibility that Old Manly might have found out about it through other channels. The point now is not that Old Manly knows the cause of Li Chuhai's death, but that he will find out about Yi Qian. Once he finds some clues, he will investigate further and won't give up easily. If he finds out about Yi Qian's identity, given his methods, Yi Qian will be in danger. Xia Jinyuan's eyes were gloomy. Old Master Li was like a wolf that had turned into a demon. He was ruthless and cunning. That was why Xia Jinyuan could retreat safely without hurting himself when he was trapped in the storm all those years. If he found out about Yi Qian, the situation would become very serious. The most worrying thing was that if he couldn't find out who killed Li Chuhai, he would take revenge on Little Fox in a fit of rage. This wasn't impossible. Yi Qian pursed her lips and said to Xia Jinyuan, "Captain Xia, can you report this to the commander-in-chief immediately?" If the military knew about this, they would have taken precautions against Old Manly. Okay. Xia Jinyuan immediately got to work. The commander-in-chief was his father, so it was much easier to contact him. It was not break time now, so Xia Jinyuan directly called the clerk's office and transferred to Commander-in-Chief Xia's office through the landline. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan were worried that Old Man Li would find out about Yi Qian because of Li Chuhai's death. Not long after Li Chuhai's death, Old Master Fu was worried that the Li family would find out about Li Chuhai's death and find out about his daughter-in-law's only granddaughter. So he looked for Master Xia and asked Family Xia to step in to protect his granddaughter. Master Xia obviously took it to heart. Xiao Yu was Family Xia's granddaughter-in-law. If Li Zhongrong dared to deal with his granddaughter-in-law, the first person who wouldn't let him off was his Family Xia. Therefore, Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan were worried that Commander-in-Chief Xia had already left traces behind more than a year ago, so that Old Man Li wouldn't be able to find out that the martyr Hong may had an only daughter. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was reviewing the documents, said calmly, "I've already made preparations more than a year ago. The Li family has also been investigating and hasn't stopped until now. It seems like Old Man Li won't stop until he dies." Xia Jinyuan sneered and asked, "He has someone in his hands. Once he finds out who killed Li Chuhai, Dad, you have to protect that hero well." Commander-in-Chief Xia put down his pen and said something that made Xia Jinyuan look up at Yi Qian in shock. Yi Qian immediately guessed why Xia Jinyuan was looking at him in shock. He smiled gently. This was her and Pigeon's mission. Captain Xia, who didn't participate, had no right to know. The hero who saved the people is not someone else. He's right beside you right now. It's good that you know. In the future, if Li Jinyan finds out anything, you can all be on guard together. These were Commander-in-Chief Xia's exact words. As soon as the call ended, Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and rubbed Yi Jian's head while she was smiling. "You're so bold when I'm not around. Did you really go to take revenge, personally?" Yi Jian smiled at him and said. It was Li Jinyan's turn to be shocked. Yi Qian pushed away the big hand that was still rubbing her head and complained with a smile, "Why do you and Big Brother like to rub my head? Stop it. If you continue, I'll become bald." Chapter 4197. With Commander-in-Chief Xia's advance warning, Yi Qian did not have many misgivings. However, she did not reveal the entire plan in detail, only saying that she and her comrades had acted together at sea and succeeded in their revenge. It was also a coincidence. At that time, when you suddenly left, I thought you were going to eliminate the power behind Li Chuhai. I was very worried, and my mental state was normal. It just so happened that my dad was going to Jin City for a meeting with representatives from the various military academies, so Commander-in-Chief Xia arranged for me to go with my dad. At this point, Yi Qian's beautiful eyes showed a hint of hostility. That night, I went to the port with a few cadets from the various military academies to check on the ship's crew, who knew that we would so coincidentally discover the problem. Perhaps everything is predestined. In the end, they found out that the freighter was just a ship that carried goods along the way. The goods they were carrying that night were none other than Li Chuhai. Yi Qian smiled. As the corners of her mouth curved, Her eyes darkened. Old Man Li was anxious to save his son, so he arranged for Li Chuhai to leave the country on a cargo ship. Who would have thought that the martyr's daughter who was killed by Li Chuhai would also be on the ship? I waited until Li Chuhai arrived, and in the end, I personally killed him when he was still trying to escape. I thought that it would take a long time to kill Li Chuhai, just like waiting for Yi Jifan to fall. Who knew that it would be done in one night? The process was so fast that I almost thought that the Li Chuhai I killed was another substitute. Fortunately, it wasn't. Li Chuhai is Li Chuhai. He had been on the run for so long, thinking that the news had passed and that no one knew what he had done in the past. He had even forgotten about the martyr he had killed, Hong Mei. It wasn't until I appeared and told him that I was Hong Mei's daughter that Li Chuhai finally remembered that he had done such a small thing. He thought that it was a small matter. As long as he was comfortable and did not suffer any grievances, destroying a person or a family was a small matter to make him happy. That night, Yi Qian saw the look in Li Chuhai's eyes. Even before his death, he did not believe that he had done anything wrong. There was not a trace of repentance or an apologetic expression on his face. Yi Qian's anger burned like a raging fire in her chest. She wanted to kill him. She had to kill him. If such a person got off the boat alive tonight, many innocent families would be killed by him as long as he went out. Yi Qian opened fire and did not give Li Chuhai a chance to get off the boat alive. Such a person did not deserve to be human. Even if he went to hell, he would be tortured. Yi Qian's voice softened the harshness of that night. She did not mention the dangers of the battle, only her own feelings at the time. After more than a year, Yi Qian was still angry when she brought it up again. Because Li Chuhai disregarded human life and still felt that he was right to be arrogant, he was angry. Xiao Jinyuan held her hand and gently rubbed the back of her hand with his thumb. He listened quietly with Li Jinyin, allowing her to pour out her remaining anger and unwillingness. In the days when he was not around, his little fox's life was hanging by a thread again and again. Time and time again, it relied on its own strength to pull through. His little fox, the girl that he loved deeply, had grown up to be independent. Now, she had relied on her own strength to face the trials and tribulations. She had used her unyielding spirit to pass through the trials and tribulations, welcoming rainbow after rainbow. Good job, female soldier. Chapter 4198. Xiao Jinyuan felt extremely proud. The girl he had been waiting for had finally grown up. He could finally rest assured and let her face more difficulties alone. He was also relieved when she went away Rui's hell training camp. Li Jinyin, who was clenching his fists, felt as if a ferocious beast was roaring in his chest, crashing into his heart. It hurt so much that it felt like it had shattered into a ball. It hurt so much that even his face turned exceptionally pale. His sister had suffered so much, and it was all because of his uncle Li Chuhai. He had harmed his uncle's family and caused his sister to suffer so much. She had almost not been able to return to the Fu family alive. At this moment, Li Jinyin hated the fact that he shared the same surname with Li Chuhai and was even related by blood. When he was young, he had struggled and wanted to leave the Li family, which looked magnificent on the outside, but was so rotten on the inside that his personality was distorted. He had struggled and suffered until his uncle told him that a person's life was far more exciting than his current life. As long as the door of the prison was not welded shut, he would have plenty of opportunities to leave. Later, he had finally left and cut off his ties with the Li family bit by bit. He did not even consider himself a member of the Li family and had only taken on a surname. He did not consider himself a member of the Li family and had never admitted that he was a member of the Li family. His surname just happened to be Li. Today, he was even more convinced that the Li family had nothing to do with him. Li Jinyin. Therefore, Li Jinyin waited for Yi Qian to finish speaking before he said in a cold voice, "As long as the Li family is not eliminated, the threat will always be there. The best way is to destroy the Li family before they find out the truth." Yi Qian, who needed to adjust his emotions after he finished talking about the past, suddenly heard his elder brother's harsh words. His pupils constricted, and he stared intently at him before he blurted out, "Brother, don't get involved." Her elder brother was a member of the Lee family, and she did not want to put him in a difficult position. "I promised Grandpa and Uncle that I would protect you." Lee Jinyan took a deep breath. His cold eyes contained the fear of implicating his only sister. He said in a deep voice, "If you have scruples because my surname is Lee, you can rest assured that I only have the surname Lee. I have nothing to do with the Lee family." But Yi Qian still wanted to say something, but Xia Jinyuan squeezed his hand and whispered, "Big brother has his own plans. You just have to wait and see." Xia Jinyuan was not at all surprised by Li Jinyan's words. His brother-in-law did not have any kinship with the Li family, especially when he knew that old man Li could very well endanger Little Fox. He treated Little Fox like a treasure, so how could he possibly side with the Li family? Naturally, he would stand on the Little Fox's side and think of a way to topple the Li family. It won't be easy to topple the Li family. Otherwise, Old Man Li would have been toppled a few years ago. In recent years, Old Man Li knows that he has made a lot of enemies in the past, so he has been living in seclusion and rarely shows himself. As for what he did in the past, he has already wiped away all traces of it. It will be very difficult to find anything that can be used against Old Man Li. Because family Xia did not have a good relationship with the Du family, Xia Jinyuan would occasionally pay attention to the Li family. He had also asked Master Xia about the Li family and knew that Old Man Li was ruthless, cunning, and scheming. He believed that his brother-in-law wanted to topple the Li family, but it was very difficult. Chapter 4199. Li Jinyan knew that it would not be easy to topple the Li family. However, if he did not do anything, he was afraid that Li Chuhai would cause his uncle and aunt to be separated forever. In the end, his so-called grandfather would cause trouble for Yi Qian. There will be a chance. There will be a chance. He lowered his eyes to hide the haze in his eyes. He would definitely find the Li family's fatal weakness. He would definitely find it. Yi Qian was very worried. She did not want her brother to bear the blame because of her. Her brother did not admit that he was related to the Li family, but what about the people outside? They would not think so. "Brother, don't be too pessimistic. Look, it has been more than a year, and Old Man Li has not found out anything about me. It is obvious that Old Man Li does not know about my existence." As soon as Yi Qian finished speaking, Li Jinyan shook his head and said, "It's not that he does not know. He mentioned the Fu family, which means that he must know why Li Chuhai was investigated. He must have found out about the relationship between uncle and aunt. Otherwise, he would not have mentioned the Fu family. You grew up in Shuku village. Everyone knows aunt and you. Once his men go to Shuku village, your identity will be exposed." "That's not necessarily true. My father has been looking for my mother for more than 20 years. He still has my mother's photo. It will be difficult for Old Man Li to find me. So what if he knows about my mother and father's relationship? My mother used a pseudonym and did not leave her real name. The army also erased all of my mother's information. I think it will be difficult for Old Man Li to find out now." Yi Qian analyzed calmly, and Xia Jinyuan nodded slightly. That's right. Li Chuhai was very ruthless. He did not leave them any way out. In the end, it would not be easy for Old Man Li to find any clues from Li Chuhai's erasure. Just like what Little Fox said, his future father-in-law had been looking for his mother-in-law for more than 20 years without any results. He did not believe that Old Man Li would be able to find out about Yi Qian so quickly. Your analysis is not wrong. Brother's analysis is also reasonable. I will ask the family to keep a close eye on him. If we find anything strange, we will immediately take action. The army will also protect Yi Qian well. With the army's ability, they can definitely do this." Xia Jinyuan looked at the time. It was already past 10 o'clock. It was time to check out and rush to the hospital. The three of them conversed for a while, and each of them had a rough idea of what to do. Before the topic ended, Yi Jian added, "Even if Old Master Li really finds out about me, you don't have to worry too much. My social circle is very small. Old Master Li won't have a chance to do anything to me." In short, she was not afraid at all. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. If they really came, they would just have to face them. She did not believe that she could not survive. The optimistic and confident Yi Qian made Li Jinyan smile faintly. His sister had always been so positive and optimistic. If she was not optimistic, she would not have been able to survive under the pressure of Yi Jifan's family. After so many ups and downs, he should believe that his sister would face them with tenacity. In the end, victory would still belong to her. He should believe in his sister like Xia Jinyuan did. The conversation went from a heavy start to a relaxed end. The optimistic Yi Qian arrived at the hospital with the two handsome men. The three of them stood in the elevator like the most beautiful scenery, attracting the attention of the people coming in. Chapter 4200. He Jing's ward was on the 18th floor. Because it was almost lunchtime, there were a lot of people taking the elevator. While the three of them were being watched, their backs were pressed against the elevator wall. Xia Jinyuan tried to block Yi Qian a few times, but in the end, this fierce soldier on the battlefield could only retreat in defeat in front of ordinary people. Yi Qian watched as the two of them were almost pressed against the elevator wall. He pursed his lips and laughed unkindly. When the elevator reached the 8th floor, a man with a big belly squeezed him like a meatball. As the elevator let out a long beep of an overweight alarm, the people in the elevator were squeezed by the man again. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan, who were already pressed against the wall, felt like it was their first time encountering such a cramped elevator. For a moment, the two of them looked tense, as if they were about to face a disaster. Yi Qian, who was trying hard to hold back his laughter, felt like his stomach was going to cramp. The two of them, it was so funny. They were squeezing into the elevator like they were facing a great enemy. No one else could be like them. In the end, the man with a big belly who still wanted to enter the elevator was escorted out by the ordinary people in the elevator. They had already called the police because they were overweight. So how could they still enter? They weren't afraid that the elevator would fall. When the elevator reached the 18th floor, there were fewer people in the elevator. The two Special Forces soldiers who were holding their breaths and walking out of the elevator let out a long sigh of relief. They were already nervous from taking the elevator, but this was their first time encountering such a situation. The two of them had a tacit understanding not to mention such embarrassing things. However, Yi Qian, who was walking in front of them, was still trembling as he tried to hold back his laughter. In the ward, He Jing and Su had already packed up. They had even completed the discharge procedures. They were just waiting for the nurse to send over the medicine that they needed to take back to school before they could pack it up and leave. When Yi Qian walked in, the two of them looked over at the same time. Su was already laughing meaningfully. If she were to describe it in another decade, the smile on her face would be the smile of an experienced driver. Before he could finish laughing, he suddenly stopped. Su saw Xia Jinyuan, and then he saw another unfamiliar man with a cold temperament who dared not look him in the eye. This. Who is this expert? How come all the people her little Jane Eyre knew were all experts? My brother. Yi Qian hooked her arm around Li Jinyan's wrist and raised her chin slightly. She looked much more proud than when she introduced her boyfriend, Xia Jinyuan. You have a brother. You're amazing. That's right. Having a brother was amazing. Su and He Jing immediately tensed up. When Li Jinyan reached out to shake their hands to show his courtesy, the two of them reflexively saluted him. They were just short of greeting him. Greetings, Chief. Their actions didn't cause Li Jinyan's expression to change. He very naturally returned the military salute to the two of them, resolving the awkwardness between the two idiots. So awkward, so awkward. They didn't know why they saluted first when they saw Yi Qian's brother move his arm. For them to salute reflexively, it was certain that Yi Qian's brother was a soldier. What a guy. Her boyfriend was a soldier, and so was her brother. Student Yi Qian, do you plan to stay in the army and stay in the army when you return home? Li Jinyan did not let the girls introduce himself first. After the salute, he tried his best to relax his usual cold expression and took the initiative to introduce himself. Hello, I'm Yi Qian's brother, Li Jinyan. If you don't mind, you can call me brother like her. Chapter 4201. His surname is Li. Does that mean he's not her biological brother? Why do they look like biological brothers? No, that's not right. Jane Eyre had mentioned before that she was the only child in her family. Both her parents had passed away, and she had a mischievous cousin who came to her school. However, she had never mentioned that she had a brother. Is he her godbrother? Suan took the lead and extended her hand to introduce herself. Hello, brotherly. I'm Suan, Jane Eyre's roommate and comrade. We're from the same class. Jing also extended her hand to introduce herself. She was much more restrained than Suan. The smile on her face was a little stiff. Hello, brotherly. I'm Jing. I'm also from the same class as Jane Eyre. We live in the same dormitory. Hello. Li Jinyan extended his hand and gently shook their outstretched hands in a gentlemanly manner. Although he had a cold personality and looked unapproachable, he would never make things difficult for others. The gentlemanly demeanor under the cold exterior made the two of them relax a little. Their thoughts were written all over their faces. Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan saw through them immediately. Yi Qian smiled and said, He's my biological brother. The situation is a little complicated. I'll tell you about it later. Have all the procedures been completed? If not, let's go and do it now. We'll have lunch outside and then go back together. Suan felt that eating with Yi Qian's boyfriend and Yi Qian's biological brother. She was worried that she would have indigestion. However, she definitely had to go. Jing said, All the procedures have been completed. We're just waiting to get the medicine. I think it's almost done. I'll go and ask. She didn't dare to stay in the ward. Yi Qian's boyfriend already had a strong aura. Now, another powerful biological brother had come. Jing felt so pressured that she couldn't breathe properly. Suan also felt the same. She immediately said, I'll go with you. After saying that, she pulled Yi Qian and smiled at the two people who made her heart tremble. Then she pulled Jing, and the three of them left the ward together. Coming out of the ward, Suan patted her chest and said with lingering fear, Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Standing in front of your boyfriend and brother. Why do I feel like I'm being inspected? I don't even dare to breathe. Me too. I was so nervous that I almost fainted. Jing didn't pat her chest. From her relaxed expression, it could be seen that she was no less nervous than Suan. Your biological brother is obviously a powerful biological brother. Little Jane Eyre, if your boyfriend dares to bully you in the future, you don't have to look for anyone else. Your biological brother will definitely work. Jing was right. If Xia Jinyuan dared to bully Yi Qian, his biological brother, Li Jinyan, will be the first person who wouldn't let him off. In the ward, Xia Jinyuan laughed and said, Look at you. You scared the two girls away. You should at least smile. Don't be so cold. Be careful that you won't be able to find a girlfriend. Yi Qian and I are still waiting for Big Brother to bring sister-in-law back. You knew that they were girls, yet you still touch my sister. Li Jinyan hit the nail on the head. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but cover his mouth and cough softly. That's different. They're not mature enough. When they see you, they're like mice that see a cat. They can't handle it. What he meant was that Yi Qian was mature, so he had the nerve to touch him. Li Jinyan glanced at him coldly and spat out 4 words. Shameless, lecherous. Last night, he had wanted to scold him, but because Yi Qian was present, he held back. Now that Yi Qian was gone, Li Jinyan's gloomy mood finally eased a little after he said those 2 words. Chapter 42:02. Shameless and lecherous. He must want to talk to his sister alone. I must be wary of this guy. Hearing these words, Xia Jinyuan's mouth twitched a few times. He was just being intimate with his girlfriend. How did it become shameless and lecherous in his brother-in-law's eyes? Fine. You're my brother-in-law. You're my brother-in-law. You're right. I won't say anything else. When his brother-in-law finds a girlfriend, he'll have plenty of opportunities to turn the tables on me. It was already noon when they left the hospital. The group of 5 did not eat near the hospital. Instead, they chose to eat at a place closer to the school. The biggest problem with eating near the school was that they could run into returning students at any time. After 3 groups of students came over to greet Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan got up and closed the door to the private room. He did not run into any students from his class. All he met were students from other classes. One of them was even a group of fourth-year students. His girl was indeed a famous figure in the National Science University. There was probably no one who did not know her. Xia Jinyuan, who had been to the military academy many times, knew that Yi Qian was very popular with the students. However, Li Jingyan did not know this. But he was able to see it with just one meal. There was a group of fourth-year students and two groups of third-year students from different classes. It was obvious how popular his sister was. He Jing and Su Wen were very calm. They were already used to it. Whenever they walked on campus, they would stop countless times to chat with the students who recognized Yi Qian. In the end, the two of them discussed that they would definitely separate from Yi Qian when they came back from the laboratory. The laboratory was already far away. If they were delayed on the way back, it would take them an hour to get back to the dormitory. The meal did not cause them any indigestion. Instead, the two of them noticed Li Jingyan and Xia Jinyuan's table manners. They could really tell whether a person came from a good family or not just by eating a meal. Even when eating, there was a sense of elegance. Su Wen, who had always thought that she had come into contact with the upper class, felt ashamed. She had only come into contact with the upper class. However, the people and things that Yi Qian came into contact with were far beyond her reach. After returning to school, Su Wen said to He Jing, "I feel that Jane Eyre's family background is not simple. Since Brother Li is Jane Eyre's brother, why is Jane Eyre's surname not Li, but Yi? One follows their father's surname, and the other follows their mother's surname. It's easy to understand." He Jing, who was tidying up her things. So what if her family background? Su Wen took out a small stool and sat down. She thought about it carefully. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "No, they definitely don't follow their mother's surname. Xiao Jian, Er's mother's surname is Sunday. Why are you thinking so much? Could it be that Yi Qian's family background is not simple? Could it be that he is not the Yi Qian we know? Hurry up and pack your things." He Jing did not want to think about these things. There was nothing to think about. Yi Qian was Yi Qian. She only knew Yi Qian. As for the identity of Yi Qian's brother and the identity of Yi Qian's boyfriend, it had nothing to do with her. Su Wen, who always liked to ponder, thought about it. That's right. Yi Qian was still the Yi Qian they knew. Since that was the case, what was there for her to ponder about? She stopped thinking about it and started packing her things. Yi Qian, who did not return to his dormitory, was sitting in the dean's office. Ever since she and Xia Jinyuan entered the dean's office, the entire office was filled with the dean's laughter. Chapter 4203. When Xia Jinyuan was in his first year of university, the department head was still his instructor. Even though Xia Jinyuan had graduated many years ago, he still kept in contact with the department head. The department head was very happy to have his favorite student. When he saw that Xia Jinyuan was familiar with Yi Qian, who had always been a popular figure in the school, he exclaimed, "Birds of a feather flock together. The two of you are the best examples. I didn't expect that you would know Yi Qian, even though you're so many years older than him. You're really fated to know him." Xia Jinyuan smiled and looked at his girlfriend, who was sitting respectfully with her back straight and her hands naturally placed on her knees. It was the standard sitting posture for a meeting. The smile in his eyes was like ripples of water. He agreed and said, "That's right. I'm really fated to know her. I was quite surprised when she introduced herself as a student of the National University of Science and Technology. I didn't expect my junior to be so amazing." "Ha ha, ha ha. Your junior isn't just amazing. She's really amazing. She shocked the instructor during the first year military training and made the third-year students panic. She's even better than you. She's as elegant as you were back then. All the leaders of our school have great hopes for her. We hope that she can maintain her current results and become an outstanding student when she graduates. She'll be promoted to a captain directly." "Captain?" Xia Jinyuan's smile became meaningful. "Captain? No, no, no. With Little Fox's current military achievements, she should be a major. Lieutenant Colonel was still not mature enough. She would need to cultivate for another 3 years or so. Their military ranks were all based on military merits. It wasn't something that would be promoted every 3 years, after graduating from a military academy. First lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, all of them had earned their military merits by risking their lives. The value of their military medals was very high. The dean knew that the two of them knew each other. In order to encourage Yi Qian to work harder, he picked out a lot of things that Xia Jinyuan had never said to Yi Qian before. Every time he said something, he would laugh and scold him. This brat. His tone of disdain did not hide his admiration. Yi Qian listened with great interest. Li Jinyin went straight to the director's office. After he was done with his work, he went to his room to rest for a while before he received a call from Xia Jinyuan. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, time for the students to have dinner. Yi Qian did not eat with the two of them and returned to class for her meal. She only rushed over to meet with Li Jinyin at night after everyone had gathered. When she arrived at school, Yi Qian's schedule was quite tight. She didn't even have time to date Lieutenant Colonel Li Jinyin, who was also staying on campus. They met in a hurry at night and chatted for less than half an hour before leaving. There were too many things to do, so there was no time to date. Fortunately, Xia Jinyuan did not rest all day. The next morning, the dean grabbed him to teach the fourth-year students. In the end, he was even busier than Yi Qian. He even had to squeeze out time for lunch. When Xia Jinyuan stayed on campus, he only wanted to walk around the campus with Yi Qian and enjoy school time while she was resting. Who would have thought that he would be so busy that Yi Qian came to find him? This completely went against his original intention of staying on campus. He didn't have much time, but Li Jinyin had a lot more time. He could have lunch with his sister at noon, go to the training ground to watch Yi Qian in the afternoon, and have dinner together in the evening. When Xia Jinyuan found out about this, he gritted his teeth. When the third day ended, he immediately went to find the dean and said that he only had 10 days of leave. He asked the dean to let him off and let him rest well for the next 3 days. Chapter 4204. The dean felt that it wasn't very nice of him to take up all of Xia Jinyuan's time, so he smiled and let him go. Thank you for your hard work. The students have responded well, so I can't bear to see you leave. Yuan, you should come back to your alma mater more often in the future. Take some time to teach your juniors. In order to see Yi Qian as soon as possible, everything was negotiable. The dean nodded and let him go with a smile. Xia Zhongxiao walked out of the dean's office, his sour face instantly turning into a smug one. His target, Yi Qian. Tonight's dinner must be with his girl. Thinking that he would soon be able to dine with the girl he loved deeply, Lieutenant Colonel Xia was only short of whistling. Tap, 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 he happily walked down the stairs. Suddenly, Lieutenant Colonel Xia abruptly stopped walking. His originally straight path slowly turned into a backward step. He wanted to change the way he went downstairs. He planned to go up to the second floor and leave the office through the pipe from the window. Would it be too late? What's wrong? You still have things to do. Xia Jinyuan turned around and looked coldly at Xia Zhongxiao, who had taken 2 steps back. His thin lips moved slightly, and his words were as clear as an announcer's. If you're not done, then I'll wait a little longer. Obviously, Xia Zhongxiao didn't have time to change the way he went downstairs. Xia Jinyuan had already caught him. I suddenly remembered that there's something I want to talk to the dean about. Big brother, are you looking for me for something urgent? Xia Jinyuan didn't move. He stood 2 steps away from the first floor and had no intention of going downstairs. Xia Jinyuan was the most difficult person to deal with in Little Fox's family. He was even more difficult to deal with than his future father-in-law. He also had a bad temper. Xia Jinyuan, who was in a hurry to have dinner with Yi Qian, smiled and looked at Xia Jinyuan, waiting for him to make things difficult for him. My sister was called out by an instructor just now. She didn't have time for dinner. Since you have been waiting for me, there must be something urgent, Xia Jinyuan answered smoothly. Then he walked down the stairs and walked towards his brother-in-law. Don't you have something to talk to the dean about? It's not a big deal. We can talk tomorrow. Is that so? Li Jinyin sneered. Xia Jinyuan, who had always been thick-skinned, nodded elegantly and replied with perfect articulation, yes. Since he had no choice, he would accompany Xia Jinyuan. In response, the corners of Li Jinyin's mouth twitched slightly. He couldn't understand how someone could lie without feeling guilty or panting. Commander-in-Chief Xia was a righteous person. He was a man of his word and disliked sweet talk. His son seemed to be his natural nemesis. With Commander-in-Chief Xia's temperament, it was a miracle that Xia Jinyuan was still alive. Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in front of him. He had a scoundrel's temper, a roguish smile, and a face that was so shameless that he wanted to kick it several times. He frowned slightly and asked a question that had been on his mind for a long time. Do you and Commander-in-Chief Xia have to fight every time you meet? Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes at his question. He had to think about how to answer it. Xia Jinyuan, who had an answer in his heart, smiled and said, When we were young, the only thing we didn't do was shoot each other with guns. I always thought it was a miracle that I was able to grow up alive under my father's watch. After that, they did not spar again during training. At this time, neither of them would give in to the other. Every punch was like a gust of wind. If they hit, both of them would feel so much pain that their pupils constricted. Xia Jinyuan knew why Li Jinyan wanted to spar with him. It was because he knew that in the end, the person who would stand by Yi Qian's side would not be him, the older brother, but him, who was now his boyfriend and would become his husband in the future. He needed to know if he was strong enough to personally hand Yi Qian over to him. Even though he already knew that Xia Jinyuan was strong enough to stand by Yi Qian's side, his brother-in-law was still worried and wanted to give it a try himself. After giving it a try, he would not object again. After giving it a try, if his brother-in-law won, then Xia Jinyuan's road to marriage would be extended. Therefore, he had to win today, and he had to win beautifully. Chapter 4206. One was fighting for his little sister's happiness, while the other was fighting for his own happiness. When the two of them fought, they were like ferocious wolves defending their territory. Every punch and kick they exchanged was filled with ruthlessness. The sparring session was so intense that some of the students training in the training center hurriedly moved away from the two of them. Were these the new instructors? So vicious the moment they entered the arena? Killing intent and hostility coexisted. Although they could not see their physical forms, the surrounding students could feel it. Some instructors immediately separated the students to prevent them from being accidentally injured. This was no ordinary sparring session. If they were accidentally injured, it would not be an ordinary injury. Even their bones might be broken. The instructors with serious expressions separated the students. Some instructors even called the duty room, just in case. This attracted the attention of the duty room, who immediately contacted the General Affairs Office. In less than 5 minutes, the serious instructors knew who the two combatants in the sparring session were. They did not know their specific identities or positions. They only knew that one of them, a lieutenant colonel surnamed Xia, was once an influential figure in the 9th batch of the military academy, while the other was said to be a special forces soldier sent by the Navy. Knowing that the two were old acquaintances, the crisis was averted. The instructors quickly ordered the students to sit down. Wearing the Army's physical fitness uniform, an influential figure in the 9th batch of our military academy, equivalent to the current influential figure Yi Qian. His overall physical fitness is especially good. He is also one of the 5 outstanding students of that batch, and his overall ranking is first. Wearing the Navy's physical fitness uniform, a special forces soldier from the Navy who came to our academy on a business trip. Judging from his skills, he is also very strong. This is a battle between experts. Everyone, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. Don't blink. Do you hear me? Yes. The instructor's explanation made the students sitting cross-legged straighten their chests and respond in unison. They were very serious about watching how the real masters of combat were going to fight. Do you see? Every move they make is a fatal move. When you raise your leg, your lower body must be steady. Once your lower body is lost, the enemy will immediately have the opportunity to strangle you. The attacker and the defender are both very strong. Both sides can easily avoid the fatal moves or minimize the danger. What you all need to learn is how to minimize the danger. Golden hook upside down. Once the enemy's head is hit, his cervical vertebrae may be dislocated and he will die. Look, the Marine representative quickly retreated, blocked the attack with one arm, and resolved the crisis. The instructor had never seen such an exciting fight before. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was so excited that he clenched his fists, wishing that he could go up and participate. The instructor was excited when he saw this, and so were the students. They were all freshmen. Although they had been in contact with combat since the start of school and had seen combat between instructors in the military academy, they had never been as exciting as what they were witnessing now. With one look, they could tell that they were not on the same level. The two of them only had eyes for each other. They were enemies that they had to defeat. All of their attention was focused on winning the battle. Xia Jinyuan swung his right arm, which was in pain from Li Jinyan's side kick. With a cold look in his eyes, he clenched his fist again and moved his long leg slightly. He took the initiative to attack again. Even from a distance, one could feel how powerful the punch was. The direction of his punch seemed to be aimed at Li Jinyan's head. It was so fast and fierce that the students sitting and watching suddenly broke out in cold sweat for the Navy representative. Chapter 42:07. In the eyes of the students, Xia Jinyuan was the representative of the Army and also their senior, while Li Jinyan was the representative of the Navy. Li Jinyan did not retreat because of Xia Jinyuan's direct attack. He only dodged with his upper body. There was also a point to the east and go to the west in martial arts. It looked like this, but it was not. The two of them had trained together before, so they had a certain understanding of each other's moves and routines. When Xia Jinyuan punched, Li Jinyan's reflexes were almost conditioned. He knew that it was a feint. Sure enough, when he dodged, Xia Jinyuan's fist did not land. Instead, he raised his leg and swept. The students watching all widened their eyes. How can it be so fake? His fist turned into a leg sweep. The coordination between his upper body and lower body is so strong. He can immediately stop his fist and change to a leg kick. How can he be called an expert otherwise? This is real combat. It's all about killing moves. What we've learned is nothing compared to what they've learned. You two watch carefully. The instructor, who was watching excitedly, suddenly heard the students talking behind him. He turned his head and said sternly, "We can discuss after class." This was a professional combat class. For eyes were not enough to watch, yet they were still in the mood to discuss. The two students who were discovered by the instructor turned serious. They did not dare to be distracted and continued to watch seriously. The two people who were fighting did not notice that they had become a textbook. They also did not notice that there was an entire class of students watching them. Xia Jinyuan saw that his brother-in-law dodged his feint and counterattacked. He, who always liked to attack, clamped Li Jinyan's wrist and laughed softly. It seems that it's not a good thing to know too much. I'm afraid it will take some time for us to exchange pointers. Then let's see who can last until the end, Li Jinyan said coldly after breaking free from Xia Jinyuan's grip. His hand went straight for Xia Jinyuan's throat. The spectating students broke out in cold sweat for the representative of the army, Xia Jinyuan. If he were to be punched, his Adam's apple would probably be smashed. The fight went on for 10 minutes, and the two of them only had a short exchange of 2 sentences. The students below the arena broke out in cold sweat for them, and secretly sucked in countless breaths of cold air. Their hearts trembled as they watched, but the two combatants did not feel like they were fighting with their lives on the line. They knew what they were doing and how good their opponent was, so they were not worried that their opponent would really be defeated by them. At most, his body would be in pain for a few days. Now, his body was already hurting. Not only did his body hurt, but his fists also hurt. After Yi Jian finished his work with the instructors, he walked out of the administration building and saw Song Jiqiu striding toward the administration building. When she saw him, he also saw her. Since he was about to leave, he started to run. "Yi Jian, the instructor just informed me that you should hurry over to the training hall. He said that there are 2 combat experts sparring. The freshmen who are training in the hall are all watching from the sidelines. The exchange of blows between experts is quite exciting." not knowing why. When Song Jiqiu mentioned that there were two combat experts sparring, Yi Qian suddenly thought of the two figures that he was most familiar with. Go and have a look. I'm afraid that it will be over soon. Song Jiqiu also wanted to have a look. If the instructor had not insisted that she take Yi Qian there, she would have already run over by herself. She inexplicably thought that the two combat experts were the Yi Qian that she knew. Song Jiqiu did not need to urge him. After he finished speaking, she had already started to run. Both of them were wearing training uniforms, so they would not be caught by the pickets when they ran. There was a short distance between the administration building and the training hall, so they could only run. Chapter 4208. While running, Song Jiqiu said, "The drill master said that they are the real martial arts masters. It would be a pity if you didn't see them. He was afraid that I wouldn't come for you, so he ordered me to find you. It seems that they are really masters. Otherwise, the drill master wouldn't have asked you to go and have a look. Several people in our class have already gone. I guess they are interested in them now." Hearing that, Yi Qian ran even faster. Big Brother and Captain Xia were both very strong. She had only seen the two of them sparring once during the training. When they fought, it was really terrifying. The murderous aura was so strong that it seemed like it could really kill the other party. The students who were watching them would be scared. Even the drill masters would be stunned. Yi Qian was a little worried. If it were really her eldest brother and Captain Xia, their sudden fight was probably mainly because of her. Yi Qian, who was worried, ran faster again. Song Jiqiu had to speed up to catch up with her. When they arrived at the training hall, Yi Jianjian saw that there was already a circle of students sitting around. There were about 50 people in one circle and 70 in another. Among them were the students in her class. They were all sitting. No one was standing. Yi Qian went in and saw the two people fighting. As she thought, they were the two people she was most familiar with. Yi Qian could feel the fierceness between them even though they were separated by a circle. It had been 20 minutes since they fought freely. The drill master who asked Yi Qian to come over saw her. He raised his hand and quietly asked her to come over. The drill master sat in a good position in the front. If Yi Qian went over, she could clearly see the fight between the two martial arts masters. Yi Qian, whose face was tense, pursed her lips and went around them. 20 minutes have passed. They're still very strong. It won't be a problem for them to hold on for another 20 minutes. Watch carefully. It's a rare opportunity. The drill master said seriously because they couldn't teach Yi Qian anymore. What Yi Jian had learned was all about lethal combat, which was the combat between the two of them. As she sat down, she actually did not hear what the instructor said clearly. Her whole mind was focused on the two people who were fighting. They had already been fighting for 20 minutes. How much longer would they have to fight? Their fists collided head-on. The sound of the collision made the hearts of the students tighten. What the F***CK? The finger bones didn't break, right? They all heard the sound of the collision. Even if it didn't shatter, it would still be extremely painful. Yi Qian furrowed his brows. Things couldn't go on like this. Victory and defeat hadn't been decided yet, and the two of them would probably be in pain for a few days. She had to think of a way to end this. However, Xia Jinyuan found Yi Jian among the trainees who were all wearing the same training uniform. Although he did not change his expression during the fight, his expression changed because of Yi Jian's arrival. Demon King, we're at 4 o'clock. Xia Jinyuan was able to find Yi Qian in a crowd of millions just because he was looking at Yi Qian. Upon hearing this, Li Jinyan, who was shaking his hand, paused for a moment. Then he coldly said, "It's just teaching." That was a good idea. Lieutenant Colonel Xia immediately understood the essence of it. It was just teaching, not fighting. The high-altitude alarm was dispelled. Then, Yi Qian heard Xia Jinyuan shaking his hand. Big Brother Demon King stopped shaking his hand. The two of them stood back to back and faced the trainees in front of them. One of them said, "Do you want to come up and give it a try?" The other said, "I'll teach you." The talkative one was Lieutenant Colonel Xia. The one who was concise was Demon King Li. The trainees who were being watched by the two of them were excited. They stood up, but before they could take a step forward, they were scared. At that moment, The two of them who were acting didn't realize that they had dug a deep hole for themselves. Chapter 4209. The two students who stood up stood in the same place, hesitating. Let's give it a try. Well, they didn't dare. They were afraid that they would be knocked down by a combat expert. That would be awkward. Thus, the instructor sitting next to Yi Qian called out loudly, "Can I have this student next to me spar with the two of you?" Hearing this, Lieutenant Colonel Xia and Li Jinyan glanced at the instructor from the corner of their eyes. Both of them froze. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a curse. If it was a curse, it couldn't be avoided. They wanted to pretend that they didn't see Yi Qian, but who knew that they would encounter such an unreliable instructor who would actually ask little Fox, his sister, to spar with them. At this moment, the two who had dug a hole for themselves were filled with thoughts. In the end, Big Brother Li Jinyan took a step back and said calmly, "Okay." He easily pushed Xia Jinyuan deeper into the hole. "Demon King, that's not very kind of you. You should at least go through thick and thin together," Lieutenant Colonel Xia said softly. "You're not a brother if you leave just like that." Lieutenant Colonel Li replied calmly, "I'm not your brother. I'm your big brother." He's already admitting that he's my big brother? Lieutenant Colonel Xia Jinyuan, who couldn't climb out of the hole, twitched his mouth. "Big brother, don't you feel guilty?" "No, I'm fine. Thank you for teaching me on the spot," Big Brother replied without a hint of guilt. He added, "Take care." Lieutenant Colonel Xia could only watch as his brother-in-law, Demon King Li, left. Then he turned around. He was so frightened that he took a small step back. He didn't know when Yi Qian was standing behind him. He turned around and came face to face with him without any preparation. Li Jinyan sat behind the student and watched with a cold expression. "Hello. I'm looking forward to your guidance." Yi Qian saluted Xia Jinyuan. The slight smile on his face made Xia Jinyuan's knees go weak. This smile made his heart flutter. Xia Jinyuan returned the salute and smiled. "I don't dare to give you guidance. I'm just showing off in front of an expert. Shall we begin?" Yi Qian asked politely. Thus, Lieutenant Colonel Xia became even more alarmed. However, Yi Qian's instructor reminded him, "Yi Qian, be careful. Don't let your guard down." As expected of an instructor, he was always able to educate his students. Lieutenant Colonel Li had already given this instructor 100 points in his heart. The applause started, and Li Jinyan clapped as well. He shouted to the students, come on. You can do it, senior sister." The freshmen shouted, "Come on, senior sister." The students in Song Jichio's class shouted, "Come on, Yi Qian." So did Li Jinyan. Xia Jinyuan, who had been forced into a corner, loosened his muscles and bones again. The smile on his face faded slightly, and, at the same time, his fist was already out. Chapter 42:10. Even though the army representative was their senior, he was in his 9th year and was not familiar with them. On the other hand, they all knew and were familiar with Yi Qian. Therefore, they naturally favored Yi Qian. They were more willing to see Yi Qian win. As for the instructor, they hoped so too. However, this was not something that would happen just because you wished it. If they wanted Yi Qian to win, they had to have the ability to defeat the army representative. Without the ability, they could only hope that Yi Qian would win. While the layman watched the show, the expert watched the skill. When Yi Qian dodged Xia Jinyuan's attack and counterattacked, the instructor straightened his back. At this moment, Yi Qian was using a military equestrian technique. The main characteristic of equestrian techniques was that there were many anti-joint moves that attacked vital points. Among them, crotch kicks were one of the most common moves. This was a compulsory combat technique for Israel's national defense, military, and law enforcement departments. The American FBI also used equestrian techniques, but the Chinese rarely used equestrian techniques and only slightly used them. However, Yi Qian's anti-joint moves and crotch kicks were not just slightly used equestrian techniques. The instructor's expression changed. It became very complicated. As an instructor, he did not know equestrian techniques, but his student Yi Qian did. Could it be that Yi Qian had been hiding his true abilities? Military equestrian techniques were simple and focused on killing the enemy. The first-year students had never come into contact with equestrian techniques, so they did not understand what kind of close-range combat Yi Qian was using. The male students only knew that Yi Qian's repeated crotch kicks made their crotch area tighten. Why did it look like a woman's self-defense technique? The number of crotch kicks he made was not an ordinary number. The male students in Yi Qian's class were extremely tense. This kind of technique, luckily they had not encountered it when they fought Yi Qian. Otherwise, if she kicked them in the crotch, they would be crippled. At this moment, the surrounding male students were filled with emotions. The male students who were in the same class as Yi Qian were rejoicing. Fortunately, Yi Qian had shown them mercy. Fortunately, they were not crippled. Yesterday, I sparred with her during training. Now I've survived. Even senior brother is having a hard time dodging. If it were us, I would have been hit by Yi Qian's first kick. A male student in the class told Song Jiqiu in this way. Song Jiqiu, whose facial expression was much more serious than that of the male students in the class, pursed her lips slightly. After a while, she said what she used was makabi, which means close combat in Hebrew. Yi Qian uses military equestrian techniques. His moves look simple, but they are direct and effective. They are mainly used to kill the enemy. Watch carefully. The instructor definitely didn't expect us to see a side of Yi Qian that we don't know about. Are you talking about the military horsemanship? The student looked at Song Jiqiu with an expression that said, "Are you kidding me? Are you sure? We have never learned the military horsemanship." Although the male students had never seen the military horsemanship, the instructor had told them what kind of fighting skills the army used and what kind of close combat skills the soldiers of the special forces were used to. This was also what Song Jiqiu was puzzled about. Yi Qian went to class like them. After class, how could she have learned the military horsemanship? Moreover, it was obvious that she had received professional training. Could it be that she had learned it during the holidays? I have learned civilian horsemanship, so I know a little. After Song Jiqiu finished speaking, she became more attentive. Yi Qian had been her classmate for 3 years, but she was still a mystery. Chapter 42:11. The students who didn't realize what was going on had their left arms twisted by Yi Qian's sudden move. Her left arm, which was locked by the representative of the army, was now facing the representative of the army. In an instant, she reversed the situation and lifted her leg again. Without any hesitation, she kicked the representative of the army in the crotch. Phew! In the arena, there was a clear gasp. A few male students seemed to empathize with her. Their hands, which were on their knees, unconsciously moved to their crotch. Li Jinyan laughed. Li Jinyan raised his eyebrows slightly. That's right, his sister didn't treat Xia Jinyuan as her boyfriend, but as an opponent. It seemed that his sister could recognize her identity, both in and out of the arena. Xia Jinyuan also laughed. He had no choice but to let go of Yi Qian's right hand and hurriedly blocked another fierce kick to his crotch. He approached her and said helplessly, "If you use the horse gamma technique again, aren't you afraid that I won't be able to avoid it and get kicked in the crotch? Give me some leeway. I don't want it to be scrapped before it's even used once. How about we switch to another type of close combat? For example, a second ago, he was still smiling and talking to Yi Qian, but the next second, his eyes were sharp and fierce, and he greeted Yi Qian with a fierce and ruthless move. The surrounding students, including the instructors, were silent. The army representative was using the move he used against the navy representative. Xia Jinyuan used sambo, which meant self-defense without weapons in Russian. Sambo was divided into 2 categories, sports and actual combat. The sambo, used by Xia Jinyuan, was naturally an actual combat sambo. Luke, a Special Forces soldier from the Signal Flag Special Forces, taught his partner very seriously. On the other hand, Xia Jinyuan learned very seriously. In less than 8 months, Luke had already lost to Xia Jinyuan several times. Although it was only a short time, Xia Jinyuan's sambo was very impressive. Just now, Li Jinyan had suffered a few losses at his hands. Even now, his arms and thighs were still aching faintly. Yi Qian knew that Xia Jinyuan was very good at close combat. Faced with his ruthlessness, Yi Qian did not cower. He used his arms to block two of Xia Jinyuan's long kicks. The moment Xia Jinyuan retracted his leg, Yi Qian suddenly rushed forward and punched Xia Jinyuan's right armpit. Not only that, he also leaned to the side to avoid Xia Jinyuan's direct punch and once again used his elbow to hit Xia Jinyuan's chest. Xia Jinyuan's moves became ruthless and ruthless. Similarly, Yi Qian's moves were not bad either. Her left elbow was fast and ruthless. Xia Jinyuan let out a muffled groan when it hit his throat. His expression changed slightly. She really did not show any mercy. She almost broke his ribs. Not bad, you've improved a lot. Xia Jinyuan's expression changed slightly from the pain, but the smile in his eyes was very deep. In the more than a year since he left, his little fox did not stop moving forward. She had improved in all aspects. Yi Jian, who was sweating on his forehead, smirked coldly. He continuously kicked Xia Jinyuan's abdomen, thighs, and knees. He had no choice. He was much shorter than Xia Jinyuan. He couldn't reach Xia Jinyuan's chest. The eyes of the onlooking freshman could not be any wider. Their senior Yi Qian was actually so powerful. The army representative was actually kicked by senior sister Yi Jian to the point where he had to parry her attacks. For a while, he couldn't fight back. Chapter 42:12. In the beginning, Yi Qian did not intend to fight with Xia Jinyuan. Even if she did go on stage, she only wanted to exchange a few moves. Who would have thought that Xia Jinyuan would suddenly attack, which instantly aroused Yi Qian's desire to win. She threw the idea of exchanging a few moves to the back of her mind. The more she fought, the fiercer she became. The more she fought, the more she wanted to fight. As for the close-range combat techniques she used, she did not pay much attention to them. It was not until later, when Xia Jinyuan reminded her not to use Mega Jutsu, that Yi Qian realized what was going on. Mega Jutsu's biggest feature was the crotch kick. She had used the crotch kick in front of many freshmen and several male students in her class. Although it was a type of close-range combat, it was better not to use it in front of other students. Yi Qian immediately switched to mixed combat. Mixed combat did not require much endurance, but mainly focused on the key points of the attack. Xia Jinyuan swept his leg over, but Yi Qian quickly blocked it with her leg. She then kneed Xia Jinyuan's abdomen, making it impossible for him to make a second attack. From kneeing to stepping close, Yi Qian, who used mixed combat, used more techniques to counter Xia Jinyuan's sambo. The two of them went back and forth, and the surrounding students could not take their eyes off of them. They all stared with their eyes wide open, not daring to blink. After saying that Yi Qian had improved, Xia Jinyuan let out a soft She had improved a lot. If we continue fighting like this, I'm afraid there will be more and more students watching. We have to end this soon. Xia Jinyuan felt that it was not a good time for the two of them to continue. He glanced around and said in a low voice, "Next time, let's find another chance to learn from each other." Yi Qian, who had already fought to her heart's content, was in a strong mood. When she heard Xia Jinyuan's reminder, she did not immediately withdraw her strength. Instead, she smiled and said in a low voice, "That depends on how you want to end this. My instructor asked me to go on stage and ask for your guidance. You should be the one to decide how to end this." He even purposely used honorifics. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "I'll clean up the mess, so you have to cooperate with me. There's no way to end this situation if it's one-sided." As the two of them exchanged punches, the spectating students could only see Yi Qian becoming more and more courageous as he fought, and their fists clenched tighter and tighter. They thought that Yi Qian would not be able to defeat the army representative. But now, they felt that it was not impossible. Yi Qian was much stronger than they had imagined. The first-year students knew about Yi Qian, but they did not know much about her. They only knew that their third-year senior sister, Yi Qian, was very powerful. Even the male students had to admit defeat. What they knew was not even the tip of the iceberg. The students who knew Yi Qian the most were the students in the same class. However, when Song Jiqiu and the others saw Yi Qian, who had not been defeated by the army representative in the arena for 15 minutes, they felt that they actually did not know Yi Qian very well. If they really wanted to know, they should have known that Yi Qian was very good at close combat. However, they did not. Like the first-year students, they did not know that Yi Qian was so good at close combat until today. At this moment, the back of the male student who had finished his combat training with Yi Qian on the first day of school during the May Day holiday was soaked in cold sweat. He was not rejoicing that he had survived a disaster, but he felt that he was lucky. No matter whether Yi Qian used mega arts or mixed combat, he could not fight against Yi Qian at all. If Yi Qian went on stage, he would be knocked down by one move. Chapter 42:13. The representative from the army used his elbow to lock Yi Qian's neck from behind. As Yi Qian was trapped, the atmosphere reached a climax. The students didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Was Yi Qian about to lose? Could he still get out of this predicament? Could he continue fighting? If he lost, they would feel that Yi Qian had actually won. He had lost to the representative from the army, but he had won over all the spectating students. Because no one could win against Yi Qian. Li Jinyan's eyes narrowed slightly. Xia Jinyuan was stricter with his sister than he had imagined. Right now, Xia Jinyuan didn't think that he was his sister's boyfriend, nor did he think that he had to give in to his girlfriend. He drew a clear line between the lines. Li Jinyan's eyes narrowed with a complicated look. Xia Jinyuan was undoubtedly a qualified soldier. Even though he was in love, he didn't lose his rationality. Li Jingguang, who had a complicated look in his eyes, suddenly didn't know how to face Xia Jinyuan. As a soldier, he admired Xia Jinyuan's rationality very much. However, as his sister's family, his heart ached for her. Suddenly, Li Jinyan didn't want to continue watching. He thought that he needed to think carefully. Right now, it wasn't about Xia Jinyuan and his sister, but about himself. He needed to reevaluate their relationship. It wasn't that he wanted to stop them, but he felt that he needed to reevaluate the way they interacted with each other. Li Jinyan stood up. The student sitting beside him sensed it and immediately turned to look at him. He asked softly, "Aren't you going to watch?" "Yes, I have something to take care of," Li Jinyan replied, and stopped watching the two people fighting. The students thought that it would be difficult for Yi Qian to escape from Xia Jinyuan's elbow lock, but Li Jinyan didn't think it would be difficult. His sister was a special forces soldier, so she had to be good at escaping from attacks like this. Even if there was a dagger on her neck, as a special forces soldier, her sister would still have to save her from the dagger. His sister would definitely be able to solve the current predicament. Before Li Jinyan could walk out of the training center, Yi Qian had already escaped. First, she kicked Xia Jinyuan's knee with her hind leg. Then, she slammed her head into Xia Jinyuan's chin. Yi Qian successfully escaped. The instructor who taught Yi Qian close combat was the first to applaud. Another instructor said in a low voice, "Looks like Yi Qian has been holding back all this while. He hasn't shown his true strength yet. During the training, she has to show her true ability. How many people in or outside the class can be her opponent? What about us? Do you think you're a match for her? Did he have the confidence to knock her down? I didn't." Yi Qian's instructor replied in a low voice as he clapped. In return, the other instructor sighed softly. That was true. With Yi Qian's current close combat skills, the instructors really couldn't beat her. No wonder she had to hide her strength. Thunderous applause sounded. Li Jinyan, who was walking towards the door, turned his head and glanced at the two people who had finished their training. His gaze inadvertently met Yi Qian's. Li Jinyan strode out of the room. He would leave the rest to Xia Jinyuan. He had something to do, so he had to go. When Yi Qian saw this, she was both amused and angry. Why didn't he think about how to face me when he was fighting me? Wasn't it too late to feel guilty after the fight? Just now, Big Brother abandoned me like this. Now, he's abandoning me again, Xia Jinyuan complained. If he didn't complain now, when would he? Chapter 42:14. Amidst the thunderous applause, Xia Jinyuan, who was standing close to Yi Qian, felt wronged. Seeing that Yi Qian was unmoved, he said, "It was Big Brother's idea to spar at the training center. I was caught by Big Brother halfway and couldn't get away. So, Big Brother brought me to the training center." The trainees had already stood up. After saluting the trainees and the instructor, Yi Qian put down his arms and said calmly, "I'll talk to you later." Xia Jinyuan looked at his girlfriend, who was walking towards the instructor. What should he do? He didn't feel like talking to her later. He still had to talk, even if Xia Jinyuan had to go against Yi Qian's wishes. After exchanging a few words with the trainees who came over to ask for advice, Xia Jinyuan took the opportunity to leave. Before he left, he deliberately looked at Yi Qian, who was talking to the instructor. Seeing that Yi Qian only looked at the back of his head, Xia Jinyuan felt uneasy and left. After walking out of the training center, Xia Jinyuan saw his brother-in-law, who had abandoned him, standing under the street lamp with his hands in his pockets. He looked cold and aloof, as if he didn't care about anything. He was all alone, and even the light that enveloped him seemed lonely. This was a very lonely person. In Xia Jinyuan's mind, an idea that even he thought was absurd flashed across his mind. Although it was absurd, Xia Jinyuan felt that he was right. Li Jinyin, who didn't fit in with the Li family, was indeed very lonely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so close to the Fu family and cut off relations with his own family. Xia Jinyuan looked at the lonely Li Jinyin and slowed down his steps. This brother-in-law of his was also a person who was hard to read. Li Jinyin, who was standing under the street lamp, also saw Xia Jinyuan walking out of the training center. The coldness in his eyes deepened. Walking out of the training center, which was only a few meters away, he thought a lot. He thought about the smile on Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan's faces when they were together. That smile was so sweet that it didn't hide the happiness in it. As an older brother, he could tell that his younger sister loved Xia Jinyuan very much. She fell in love with Xia Jinyuan, who used to be known as the devil's incarnate in his youth. She fell in love with someone who changed so much that he almost thought that Xia Jinyuan had a twin brother. Grandpa said that his younger sister was very happy with the family Xia, and that she had found the right person, and the family. And even Uncle said there was no one more suitable for her than the family Xia. Two. Uncle and Grandpa and Uncle were the only ones who didn't express any opinions. He had seen how ruthless Xia Jinyuan could be when dealing with certain matters. The reason why Du Jiai was still afraid of Xia Jinyuan was because Xia Jinyuan once dragged her from one end of the street to the other end of the street and directly dragged her to the entrance of a red light venue. The words he spat out were still fresh in his memory. "You like to scheme so much? You also like to trick people into coming to such places to bully them. It seems like Miss Du likes to sleep with thousands of people. Why don't you live here from now on? I'm sure Miss Du will be happy." How old was Xia Jinyuan at that time? He was only 16 years old. How old was Du Jiai at that time? The third year of middle school. It was also that time that Du Jiai hugged his leg for the first time and called him cousin for help. Of course, he didn't save her. He just took a glance and left on his bicycle without looking back. But he still couldn't forget what Xia Jinyuan said and the ruthless look on his face. Chapter 42:15. He was a person who would do anything to get what he wanted. That was what he thought when he was 17 years old. Later on, when he met Xia Jinyuan, who was also training with him, he still thought the same. Later on, he found out that Xia Jinyuan had changed. He found out that Xia Jinyuan had become his sister's boyfriend. He found out that Xia Jinyuan had helped his sister a lot before his sister returned to the Fu family. There was even a period of time when he thought that Xia Jinyuan was indeed a man that his sister could entrust her life to. However, every time he thought of Du Jiai's shrill scream when they were young, he inadvertently saw Xia Jinyuan's ruthlessness when he was young. When he thought about his relationship with his sister, he felt like something was stuck in his heart. Xia Jinyuan had a bad temper in their circle. Even he, who was not in the circle, knew about it. At the same time, he also knew that no matter how bad-tempered he had strong principles and was not the type to get angry easily or make things difficult for others. So why was he so ruthless towards Du Jiai? In the past, Li Jinyan did not think that he needed to think about this. He even thought that Du Jiai, who looked sweet on the outside but was ruthless on the inside, deserved to be taught a lesson. But now it was different. A ruthless guy was with his sister. He had to get to the bottom of this. If Xia Jinyuan and Du Jiai had an ambiguous relationship when they were young, he would have warned Xia Jinyuan not to think that Du Jiai had turned over a new leaf. He had to get to the bottom of this. Xia Jinyuan had already walked over. Before he could speak, Li Jinyan said calmly, "My sister looks a little angry. How is it? Is she angry at you?" She was so angry that she kept kicking Xia Jinyuan's crotch. He glanced at her calmly. Xia Jinyuan turned sideways and said calmly, "Big brother, you were the one who started this, but you ran away first. Isn't it a little too late to ask if she's angry now? Isn't it normal for you to coax her when she's angry?" His brother-in-law's face darkened without any warning. Even his gaze became exceptionally sharp. Could it be that you still don't want to coax her? Xia Jinyuan suddenly realized that the famous Devil King could be quite annoying when he acted like a scoundrel. Big Brother was the one who got himself into trouble. He felt that things were not going well, so he passed the responsibility to me. Yi Qian is my girlfriend, so I will definitely coax her well. It's just that Big Brother's way of doing things is a little too disloyal. After all, we've climbed through the trenches together. They crawled through the trenches together. Then you have to thank the trenches that we once climbed together. The corners of Li Jinyan's mouth twitched. His cold gaze was like a knife scraping across Xia Jinyuan's face. Xia Jinyuan, did you and Du Jiai have an ambiguous relationship? This question was not just a little abrupt. No, it was not abrupt. It was shocking. It was so shocking that Xia Jinyuan choked on his breath and coughed violently. He was so shocked that Xia Jinyuan coughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. Although he coughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes, Xia Jinyuan's gaze was exceptionally sharp. He suppressed the coughing in his throat and asked in a deep voice, "Where did you get the news from?" His deep voice was incomparably cold and sharp. Li Jinyan's heart instantly sank. His reaction was so big. Could it be that he had guessed correctly? So it's true? Li Jinyan, whose face had already darkened, asked fiercely, "Did you really have an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai?" Chapter 42:16. You had an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai? Yi Qian's cold voice came from behind them. She had only repeated what Li Jinyan had said, but the coldness in her voice was several times greater than that of Li Jinyan. Xia Jinyuan knew that things had gotten out of hand. He looked at Li Jinyan coldly, turned around, and strode towards Yi Qian. "My brother, why did you say that all of a sudden? Is Auntie making things difficult for you again?" When Yi Qian asked, Xia Jinyuan instantly heaved a sigh of relief. That meant that Yi Qian hadn't misunderstood him. Big Brother suddenly said that. I also suspected that Madame Xiao had said something outside again. Xia Jinyuan used the word again. It was obvious that Madame Xiao had done something similar in the past. Li Jinyan was puzzled by their conversation. Madame Xiao? Why was there another Madame Xiao? Who was Madame Xiao? I'll go ask my brother. Yi Qian held Xia Jinyuan's hand and walked in front of Li Jinyan like a protector. She said coldly, "Brother, did you hear some rumors?" Li Jinyan glanced at the men who were being protected by his sister, then looked at Yi Qian. His thin lips twitched slightly. He wanted to say, "Who's protecting who?" But he swallowed his words. Ask him to answer whether he has or has not. That's impossible. Before Xia Jinyuan could answer, Yi Qian had already replied, "Captain Xia can't have an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai." What a tight protector. Li Jinyan felt a headache coming on. He wasn't an ordinary gangster when he was 16 or 17. He only turned over a new leaf later on. Yi Jian pursed her lips and couldn't help but smile when she used the word "turn over a new leaf." I know he used to be a gangster. Grandpa Xia, Grandma Xia, and the commander-in-chief all told me. Brother, tell me, where did you hear about Captain Xia and Du? Don't put my name together with hers. I don't love her. Xia Jinyuan was not in a good mood, and his handsome face was frighteningly cold. He opened his mouth and said in a hostile tone, I didn't know that there were such rumors in the capital. Are they bullying me because I haven't been in the capital for a long time? I once saw you dragging Du Jiai away with my own eyes. I even heard you say that since Du Jiai likes to scheme so much. Yi Qian looked at Xia Jinyuan and said, "My brother has seen it with his own eyes. Do you want to explain?" Her man had an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai. Yi Qian refused to believe it no matter what. Thus, she let her man explain to her elder brother. As for her, there was no need for her to explain, because she trusted him. Xia Jinyuan frowned and said, "When did I ever?" Halfway through his sentence, Xia Jinyuan thought of an old incident that happened more than 10 years ago. His brows furrowed even more. "Are you talking about something that happened more than 10 years ago?" Li Jinyan nodded slightly. What else could Xia Jinyuan say? He was angry and amused at the same time. He told Yi Qian about the incident that happened more than 10 years ago. "I told you before that I had a feud with that woman. It was this feud. She schemed against the younger sister of one of my friends when I was still the crown prince. I dealt with her and dragged her from the streets to the entrance of a red light establishment at the end of the street." Xia Jinyuan glanced at his brother-in-law and smiled faintly. "I said some harsh words, but I didn't expect Big Brother to hear it. I remember that the woman even hugged Big Brother's leg and begged for help, but Big Brother ignored her and rode away on his bicycle." Chapter 42:17. It was something that happened more than 10 years ago. Xia Jinyuan didn't expect that it would be the main reason why Li Jinyan didn't accept him in Yijian. This made Lieutenant Colonel Xia so angry that he wanted to spar with his brother-in-law again. His explanation removed the stone in Li Jinyan's heart. So that was what happened. He had misunderstood. "Sorry, I've misunderstood you." Li Jinyan apologized for his misunderstanding. Although his tone was faint, it was clear that he was sincerely apologizing. Now that Li Jinyan knew that he had misunderstood, his expression softened. He looked at the two of them holding hands, and a faint smile appeared in his cold eyes. So it was all a misunderstanding. Fortunately, he clarified everything tonight. Otherwise, it would have continued. He looked at the men who were being protected by his younger sister and thought about the interaction between the two of them. Because there were no misunderstandings between them, he thought about it again and realized that the interaction between the two of them was different. He could see that their interactions were not one-sided, but mutual. Xia Jinyuan protected his little sister, and similarly, his little sister protected Xia Jinyuan. The love between his little sister and Xia Jinyuan was a love of equal strength. It was not a one-sided relationship where one of them relied on the other or protected the other. The two of them were evenly matched, and neither of them would be a burden to the other. Thinking of this, the smile in Li Jin's cold eyes deepened. This time, he smiled as he looked at Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan, who was shocked by his words, took a small step back when he saw his brother-in-law's benevolent smile. "Xia Jinyuan, I'm leaving my little sister in your hands. From now on, you will be the one who will accompany her for the rest of her life. If she is bullied or wronged, I hope that you will always be the first to know. I also hope that you will be the one who comforts her." Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan. His cold voice softened because of Yi Qian. "I hope that when she is wronged or suffers, she will always think of you, not me, uncle, or grandfather. She chose you, and her heart will always be with you. If she is unhappy or angry, you will comfort her, make her happy, and make her laugh. This is what you must do. If you can't even make my little sister happy, I don't know what the point of choosing you is. I know that you can help, and I know that without you, my little sister would not be here today, but..." Under the street lamp, Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan with a sharp gaze. "But this is not important to my family. All we want is for my little sister to be happy. I hope that after she chooses you, she will always be happy. Xia Jinyuan, my little sister has suffered and suffered. She has endured blood and tears. This is the pain of our family. Now that she has returned home, we must shelter her from the wind and rain. We must make sure that the pain, guilt, blood, and tears of the past will never happen again. All we want is for my little sister to be happy for the rest of her life. I hope that you will be able to make her happy for the rest of her life. My little sister is in your hands. I beg you, as her brother, to take good care of my little sister. Please take good care of my little sister. Thank you." At this moment, the proud and lofty Li Jinyan put down everything for Yi Qian. As her brother, he begged Xia Jinyuan to take good care of Yi Qian. Yi Qian heard this, and tears welled up in his eyes. "Making Yi Qian happy is my greatest wish for the rest of my life." Xia Jinyuan answered Li Jinyan firmly. He only had two things for the rest of his life. First, to live up to his military uniform. Second, to make his lover happy for the rest of her life. Chapter 42:18. Yi Qian was someone who lacked love, but after meeting Uncle Jin and Uncle Chun, returning to the Fu family, and being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with her loved ones, the love that she lacked and lost was slowly replenished. She filled up the empty hole in her heart that she didn't know when it would stop in her previous life. She didn't think of herself as a person who liked to cry. However, every time she saw the people around her who loved her deeply and cared for her deeply, afraid that she would be wronged, Yi Qian couldn't help but cry. Every time she cried, she wondered if she was really made of water. Otherwise, why would she cry so much? Therefore, most of the time, after crying, Yi Qian felt very regretful. But after she regretted it, she still cried when she wanted to. Just like now. Teardrops flowed out of her eyes one after another, until Li Jinyan couldn't help but laugh. "Why are you crying like this? It's as if Sixth Brother and I bullied you." Li Jinyan didn't think that Yi Qian was crying because of him, so he conveniently dragged Xia Jinyuan into it. Okay, don't cry. We're not far from the entrance of the training center. When the students come out and see you crying, they will really think that we bullied you." What else could Xia Jinyuan say? Everything had to involve him. Fine, since Xia Jinyuan was his brother-in-law, he would let him have his way. Xia Jinyuan pursed his lips as he watched his brother-in-law gently wipe away his girlfriend's tears. He then saw his girlfriend leaning her forehead against his shoulder as she cried silently until her shoulders trembled. He slowly reached out his hand and pulled his girlfriend into his arms under his brother-in-law's cold gaze. He was domineering yet gentle. He gently stroked Yi Qian's back with one hand and said gently, "How much longer do you want to cry? You can't cry for too long. The freshmen won't come out, but I'm afraid that the students in your class will come out. If you continue crying, Big Brother and I'll be surrounded by them. Neither of us will be able to leave." Li Jinyan glared at Xia Jinyuan. This fellow was indeed cunning. Just for a short while, he wanted to dominate his little sister. Why was her heart as petty as the tip of a needle? After that, Li Jinyan heaved a sigh of relief. He was so jealous that even he, her big brother, couldn't hug his little sister. It could be seen that although the devil's incarnate of family Xia was very cunning, he really valued his little sister. The smile in her cold eyes was like a willow twig in March gently brushing across the water surface, gentle, full of spring softness. Knowing that he treated his sister with sincerity, she should be relieved. It was time for him to relax. The Devil King, who had never used his status as an elder brother to get close to Xia Jinyuan, raised his hand and patted his brother-in-law on the shoulder. "Take good care of him. I have something to do, so I'll leave first." She mouthed the words and even took light steps as she left. She did not let Yi Qian, who was trying to adjust his emotions, notice. When Yi Qian lifted his head from Xia Jinyuan's arms and turned around, he saw a slender figure walking slowly in the middle of the wide campus road. Dim yellow lights spilled all over the ground, like a small mountain, sometimes high and sometimes low, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. The slowly walking figure stepped on the flickering lights, and even the elongated shadow revealed a sense of loneliness and solitude. Just like that, he walked alone. No one accompanied him. No one loved him. It was as if he would be alone for the rest of his life. He walked alone for the rest of his life. Whether it was sadness or happiness, he didn't need others to know. Whether it was crying or laughing, he was all alone. Chapter 42:19. Yi Qian, who had finally stopped crying, felt her vision blur again. Her lips moved slightly as she said softly, "Brother, you will be happy. You will definitely be very, very happy." Grandpa was right. Her brother had been alone for too long and needed someone to accompany him. The rest of his life was still long. She would be happy with Captain Xia for the rest of her life, and her brother would also be happy with her sister-in-law for the rest of her life. "Brother, do you still remember the anniversary? I've seen her." Yi Qian raised her voice. Xia Jinyuan didn't even have time to cover her mouth when she suddenly said this. Her raised voice had already spread out. When Li Jinyan heard her voice, he paused in his steps and turned to look at his sister. He nodded slightly without replying. He remembered a female police officer who dared to search his body. Why did he suddenly remember her? This was the first time an adult woman had touched him from his shoulder to his leg. When she touched him, he reminded the policewoman who looked like she lacked practical experience. "If I were a criminal, when you're facing me for a body search and want to squat down to continue the search, I'll pull out a weapon and stab it into your neck from the side the moment you're half squatting. I'll cut your arteries and puncture your trachea, letting the blood flow back into your lungs." He had only reminded her out of kindness. Then his identity was questioned, and he ended up at Dangui Garden. The impression was so deep that when Yi Qian mentioned it, she immediately remembered. Yi Qian still wanted to say something, but Xia Jinyuan had already covered her mouth and quickly rushed into the alley. His little ancestor, she had cried until she didn't even know where she was. She dared to make a ruckus in such a quiet place. Did she forget about the military academy's pickets? She had forgotten when she was talking, but now she remembered when she was running away. "Student in front, stop. Don't run." Because the sound of the pickets had already been heard, they didn't know where they had been hiding. Li Jinyan looked at the three figures that suddenly rushed out from the shadows of the trees on the side of the road. He silently turned around. He didn't want to get involved in this kind of thing. Pickets, any student who had attended a military academy would know that the pickets in the military academy were not to be trifled with. Even if he was not a student now, he would not go against the pickets, especially the picket from a National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology. It was said that he was so upright that he even criticized a leader for not strictly wearing his military uniform. Big brotherly Jinyan had abandoned him once again. This time, the people he abandoned included his own sister. Xia Jinyuan pulled Yi Qian along the familiar path as he ran. There were many surveillance cameras in the military academy, especially now that there were surveillance cameras everywhere. He had not been to the University of Science and Technology of China for a long time, so he was not sure where the cameras were and where they were not. Therefore, Xia Jinyuan stopped running when he reached a dark spot. He held Yi Qian's hand tightly and led Yi Qian back to where they came from. It was the exact opposite. His identity and Yi Qian's identity were enough to eliminate the picket guard's suspicion toward the two of them. The picket guards who were chasing after them had already seen the two figures walking towards them. One of them was tall and the other was short. They looked a little like the two people who ran away just now, but at the same time, it didn't look like them. It had always been difficult for the picket guards to catch students who broke the rules in the middle of the night. Seeing the two people walking towards them, the running picket slowed down and stood in front of them. He said sternly, "Hello, comrades, please show your identification." The picket guards had the right to check their identification. If they caught students who broke the rules of military discipline, they would be criticized at the weekly meeting. Chapter 42:20. Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan took out their IDs at the same time. 3 minutes later, the two of them continued to walk forward and stood where the three of them had been standing. Yi Qian didn't feel like crying anymore. She wanted to laugh when she saw how skillfully the man beside her dealt with the police. "I wasn't as honest as you in the past. It's harder for the police to catch me than to reach the heavens. Even if they catch me, I won't let them find anything wrong with me." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and said proudly, "First of all, you can't panic when you see the police. If you panic, you'll be in trouble. Learn from them. You still have a year to go. You're the number one headache for the teachers, team leaders, and leaders during your time in school. That's why the police often catch you. I'm different. The police will smile when they see me and won't come over to check my ID. Yi Qian smiled and looked at the handsome and gentle man in the light. It was because of you that the police checked my ID. Yes, yes, yes. You're right. If you hadn't shouted, the police wouldn't have come over. Xia Jinyuan affectionately scratched Yi Qian's nose with his finger and sighed. You're so brave. No matter how much of a headache I caused, I wouldn't have dared to shout at the top of my lungs in the middle of the night. Yi Qian blushed and said softly, I forgot. That's why I said you're brave. By the way, who's Nian Yin? What's her relationship with Big Brother? It was the first time he heard her mention an unfamiliar name. She's a policewoman. A misunderstanding led to my brother bringing her back to Danguei Garden to verify her identity. Grandpa even mistook her for my brother's girlfriend. Yi Qian picked out the key points. Xia Jinyuan thought for a while and said slowly, Big Brother nodded, just now. It seems like Big Brother has a deep impression of Nian Yin. Grandpa is good at reading people. If he said that Nian Yin is suitable for Big Brother, then it must be very suitable. Since Big Brother has a deep impression of Nian Yin, we could try to get along. I want it too, but I can't do it now. She's not in the country right now. She won't be back until next year. Yi Qian sighed softly. Thinking of the lonely figure walking in the dim light just now, Yi Qian's eyes dimmed slightly. After Aunt left, Big Brother's life in the Li family was very bad. Grandfather said that old Madame Xiao Li even planned to kidnap Big Brother. If not for Big Brother's vigilance, he would have been kidnapped and killed. Although Big Brother has the identity of a member of the Li family, Old Man Li did not accept Big Brother, which made Big Brother's life difficult when he was young. Captain Xia, Big Brother wants me to be happy for the rest of my life. I also want Big Brother to be happy for the rest of his life. When the time comes, do you think I should combine the two of them and let them try it out? I have Nianyan's number. We can give it a try. The bachelors in our army have no other way to get in touch with girls other than being introduced by friends and family. Yi Qian pursed his lips and smiled. Let the country assign you a girlfriend. National distribution? You can even think of something like that. I'm sure there must be many girls waiting for the country to assign you to them. Yi Qian's smile reached his eyes. His eyes were bright and shining like stars. National distribution of boyfriends, girlfriends. Xia Jinyuan could not stop laughing. Then I'll go back to the army and talk to the bachelors. I'll tell them not to worry. The country will assign them girlfriends. It's just a matter of time. Yi Qian was also laughing to himself. Luckily, she did not need the country to assign her a boyfriend. She already had one. Chapter 42:21. Perhaps it was the first time Xia Jinyuan heard that boyfriends and girlfriends had to be assigned by the country. He found it funny as he accompanied Yi Qian to the library. He was handsome and elegant to begin with. When he wasn't smiling, he looked cold and dignified. Now that he was in a good mood, he had a deep smile in his eyes, making him look even more handsome and elegant. He exuded the elegance of a rich young master. No matter how bad Yi Jian's colors were, she was still dazzled by his good colors several times along the way. Even her heart thumped a few times. Her man was good at both literature and martial arts. He was also quite good-looking. He treated her very well in every aspect. It was rare for him to be so affectionate. As she thought about it, Yi Qian couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, she felt like she had profited. Although Xia Jinyuan was laughing, he had already thought about Yi Qian's words several times in his heart. Assign girlfriends by the country. This method wasn't impossible. In fact, it was very feasible. He planned to go back and have a good discussion with the Major General. He wanted to see if he could let his comrades in the country, who might actually be single, have a chance to settle down. For example, blind dates. There was no need to worry about people like Han Jing, Bai He, and K7. They all came from rich families. Even if they retired from the military, they wouldn't have to worry about finding a girlfriend. It mainly depended on whether they liked it or not. Then, for people like V8 and young Sparrow Hawk, who came from poor families, if they didn't find a girlfriend in time, their marriage would indeed become a big problem. As the captain, he couldn't just watch his comrades not have a partner when they grew old. Couples in their youth would accompany each other when they grew old, just like old master and old madam at home. They were deeply in love when they were young, but when they grew old, they would support each other and hold each other's hands. They would have endless words to talk to each other, diluting the loneliness of not having children or grandchildren by their side. It's settled then. He would first ask his comrades for their opinions. If they thought it was feasible and could accept the arranged blind dates, then he would let the country assign them. After making up his mind, Xia Jinyuan felt that his girlfriend had solved a problem for him. He rubbed Yi Qian's head and said with a smile, "You've solved a big problem for me. I plan to discuss it with my comrades when I go back and see if they're willing to accept all the girlfriends assigned by the country. If they're willing, I plan to apply to Major General Yang and arrange blind dates for my comrades." Hearing this, Yi Qian widened his eyes and said in surprise, "I was just saying, you actually took it seriously? A girlfriend assigned by the country." She was really just saying it casually. Why did Captain Xia take it seriously? Yes, it's true. It's a feasible plan. There are many bachelors in our team. I've been in the team for a few years now. So far, only 2 couples have gotten married. One is G3, and the other is pigeons. There are only so few veterans, and more than half of them are bachelors. As the captain, I'm also quite worried about their marriage. I have to think of a way to solve it. Unlike in the future, the military now did not open up the military from time to time to allow ordinary people to understand the life in the military. It was all under closed management, and unrelated people were not allowed to come close. The security was so tight that ordinary people had no idea what it was like inside the military. Soldiers were also not allowed to go out at will. As a result, if they wanted to find a girlfriend, they had to rely on their families to introduce them. Especially for special forces soldiers like Xia Jinyuan, who had a high-risk occupation, they didn't even have a holiday at the end of the year. Even if their families wanted to introduce them, they couldn't. They could only rely on the military to find a solution. Chapter 42-22. Xia Jinyuan talked about the current situation in the Snowfield Brigade, and Yi Qian could empathize with him. When he mentioned that his comrades would sometimes reject the pursuit of girls because of their careers, Yi Qian felt very sad. Compared to their comrades giving up, she and Captain Xia were much more fortunate. Big Brother's marriage has to be settled as soon as possible. He's 1 year older than me, and it's time for him to get married and have children. As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan brought the topic back to his brother-in-law. Once his brother-in-law's marriage was settled, he probably wouldn't keep such a close eye on him and Little Fox. With a brother-in-law who was so protective of his sister, Yi Qian felt a lot of pressure as his brother-in-law. Yi Qian nodded in agreement and said softly, "Grandpa said the same thing. Big Brother is almost 30 years old and has been alone for so many years. It's time for him to have someone by his side." Last time, Grandpa mentioned it to Dad, and Dad said that the female soldiers in the Navy are rare treasures. Even the clerks at sea are male soldiers, so it'll be difficult for Big Brother to find a girlfriend at sea. Now that you mention it, I have to urge my brother to find me a sister-in-law as soon as possible. The only sister-in-law I can think of right now is Nian Yan. There was a hint of heaviness in Qing Qian's voice. Her brother was actually the same as her. No one loved them since they were young, and they had to rely on themselves to survive. Big Brother relied on himself in his previous life, just like in this life, and became a pillar of the country. As for herself, fortunately, she didn't live her life in vain. She finally lived a decent life. She had already found Captain Xia, and she hoped that her brother would soon find a girl who could make him not feel lonely anymore. She wanted a girl who could make him worry about her every time he came back. She wanted her brother to take care of her carefully. Xia Jinyuan believed that it was not that his brother-in-law could not find a girlfriend. Even if he did not have a family background, he could find a girlfriend by himself. If he did not believe it, he could definitely win the hearts of countless girls just by walking on the streets. The main thing was whether his brother-in-law was willing or not. The two of them chatted as they arrived at the library. Like a normal couple, they had endless things to talk about. One topic at this moment, another topic at that moment. There was not much time left for them to chat like this. Xia Jinyuan had to return to the military headquarters tomorrow afternoon, and then immediately return to the unit. He had been away for more than a year. As the captain of the Snowfield Brigade, he did not even have a month of rest. After a few days of poor rest, he would be busy all the time. Both of them knew that tomorrow would be the day they would be parting. Neither of them mentioned it, and they spoke gently and softly along the way. The melancholy of parting did not shroud their brows, nor did it affect their mood at this moment. They accepted it calmly because they were used to it. Li Jinyin, who had silently walked away, walked to the large sports field. The sports field had already quieted down. Without the intense training during the day, Li Jinyin walked slowly along the sports field. His expression was indifferent, and no one could tell what he was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was not thinking about anything, or perhaps he was thinking about all sorts of problems. He had always been this lonely. He was used to being alone and indifferent. Even if he was walking alone without anyone by his side, he would not feel anything. But tonight, Li Jinyin felt a little lonely for the first time. He had personally handed his younger sister over to another man, watched the other man carefully care for her, and watched the couple standing in front of him. Even if there were tears, they could not break the affection. At that moment, he felt gratified and envious at the same time. Chapter 42-23. Sixth brother, who had family Xia, was lucky enough to find his younger sister. From then on, he had his younger sister by his side. From then on, he had the deepest concern in his heart. He had the love of his life. In the future, they could hold hands, fight together, and hold hands together. He suddenly felt a little envious of this kind of love. He was so envious that he even felt a little moved. He wondered if he should also find a girl who could hold hands with him. A girl who could hold hands with him until he grew old. A girl who would only love him for the rest of his life. In that instant, he walked from the training center to the field. He walked for almost 15 minutes, but he still couldn't suppress his feelings. Not only did he not suppress them, but he also felt more and more lonely in the starry night sky. Lonely. Li Jinyin stopped in his tracks and pursed his thin, cold lips. Why did he suddenly feel so lonely? He had been living like this for so many years. How could he feel lonely? How could he be so envious of his younger sister's love that he wanted to find a girl to hold hands with? A girl to hold hands with was not something he could hold hands with just because he wanted to. Forget it. With a career like his, he shouldn't waste a girl's youth. He didn't go home for many years. Everything he did was for the army. He ate, dressed, lived, and traveled in the army. He rarely came back, even once a year. After thinking about it, Li Jinyin felt that it was better not to find a girlfriend. Not everyone was as lucky as sixth brother, who had a family Xia, to be able to find a girlfriend like his younger sister. He took out his phone and put it back into his trouser pocket. The blue screen flashed, and a group of phone numbers could be vaguely seen on the screen. Zhou Nyian. That was the phone number that Nyian had left for Li Jinyin. A girl who had indeed left a deep impression on him. He didn't have any feelings for her. He only felt that she was very interesting. When she made his grandfather laugh, every time he looked at her, he felt like he was looking at an animal, a little monkey. Just like a lively and interesting monkey, she easily made his grandfather laugh. Her personality was completely different from his younger sister's. She looked carefree, but was actually very attentive. She was also very humorous and elegant. His grandfather liked her very much. A little fox and a little monkey. It was as if the two little animals in the capital had met each other and were able to capture criminals side by side. It was indeed fate. For so many years, she was the only girl he had interacted with. That was why he had such a deep impression of her. That was why his heart was moved in that instant. Should he also find a girlfriend? That was why he thought of her. I need to calm down, Li Jinyin said in a low voice. As if he had made a decision, he took out his phone from his pocket and lit up the screen. Finally, he deleted Anniversary's phone number. It was better to be single. If he was lonely, then so be it. He was already living in fear, so why harm an innocent girl? He just suddenly wanted to find a girl to hold hands with. Other than his sister, she was the only girl he had on his phone. His first impression of her was not bad, so there was no need to think too much about it. After deleting Anniversary's phone call, Li Jinyan no longer strolled along the field alone. He had come alone and left the field alone. The night swallowed his figure. The field was very quiet and the stars were very bright. There was no trace of his feelings. The next afternoon, after Yi Qian sent off Xia Jinyuan, he didn't have time to feel sad. Li Jinyan, who was supposed to stay for 2 more days, also left in a hurry. He didn't even have time to say goodbye to Yi Qian and left in a hurry. By the time Yi Qian found out, it was already nighttime. Chapter 42-24. He was only half an hour late from the actual combat simulation practice room. Big Brother, who was supposed to leave in 2 days, had actually left. He was in such a rush that he did not even have time to say goodbye. Could it be that there was an emergency in the army and he was called back? That must be it. Other than an emergency in the army, there was nothing else that could make Big Brother leave in such a hurry. Because he did not see Li Jinyan off, and Xia Jinyuan had also left today, Yi Qian, who is usually casual, was not in a good mood at this moment. Captain Xia should have already reached the military by now. It was already 10 o'clock at night, so he should have already returned to the army. Time passed quickly. Similarly, Captain Xia, who was chasing after time, was also exceptionally busy. It had only been a few hours since they parted. Yi Qian, who had not yet adapted, lay on his bed with his eyes open until past 12 o'clock before falling asleep. She was the only one in the dormitory. He Jing and Su Wen had followed the instructors to a meeting at the provincial military base. She was not with them because she was responsible for the actual combat simulation exercise. The actual combat simulation was a computer simulation exercise using sand tables, computers, and maps. This was the first time that the University of Science and Technology of China and Luji had completed an actual combat simulation on the internet. It was also the first time that the military academies had started a simulation on the computer, so the 2 schools attached great importance to it. This was a monumental process. Starting a simulation like this could first promote communication between the military academies and students. The confrontation between the 2 armies would start in the 4 cities in the south. Lu Ji would initiate the invasion of the cities, while the University of Science and Technology of China students would defend until Lu Ji was repelled. The competition had only started in a meeting today, and the actual competition on the computer would only start tomorrow. Yi Qian, who had sent his lover and family away, only had a short night of discomfort before throwing himself into the intense simulation the next day. Li Jinyan took a 3-hour flight and then a helicopter to arrive at the base of the Tri-Habitat Storm Frogman assault team. He alighted from the military helicopter and strode towards the combat command building. The Great Mermaid who came to pick him up reported the latest situation while walking quickly. One member of the Liabi peacekeeping force has been sacrificed. An electromagnetic specialist, 3 students, and an interpreter sent by our country are still missing. The location of the missing persons is the Garovi coast. It was inconvenient for Big Shark to speak on the phone. Now that she was in the base, she seized the time to report all the information they had received to Demon King. Li Jinyan of the Storm Commandos, codenamed Demon King, already knew the ins and outs of the whole matter before he even reached the battle command building. The electromagnetism expert and the 3 students were all from the University of Science and Technology of China. The translator was an Australian international student who had just joined the army last winter. His ability was outstanding, and he also had some skills as the accompanying translator. 2 days ago, they had gone missing after landing on a boat. Both the people on the boat had disappeared. The Chinese peacekeeping force that had entered Libya immediately sent reinforcements to investigate. In the end, one of the peacekeepers was sacrificed. The Chinese soldiers who went to the peacekeeping force all had light weapons in their hands, and they mainly focused on medical and engineering construction. In addition, the 14 years of civil war had destroyed the entire country's security system. The Chinese peacekeepers were very dangerous, and the deployment of personnel was not very sufficient. After 2 days without any results, and one of the peacekeepers had been sacrificed, the Chinese military immediately stopped the search for the peacekeepers and arranged for the Chinese special forces to go as quickly as possible. The location of the disappearance was the coast. After much consideration, the military decided to send a tri-habitat team that had not been formed for 5 years to the Garovi coast. Chapter 42:25. This was the first time the Storm Commandos had to go overseas for a mission, and it was in a country that had been in a civil war for 14 years. Danger lurked everywhere. As the captain, Li Jinyan said to the 12 participating water ghosts with a cold expression, "Do you want to achieve something?" "Yes." The 12 participating members answered Li Jinyan in a loud voice and high morale. "Me too." There was an undercurrent in Li Jinyan's cold gaze, like the undercurrent in the depths of the calm sea. Although it was turbulent, it was not easily discovered. "I want it too, but I hope that you will always remember that you only have one life. We have to find the people. We have to bring back the lives. Their lives, our lives, and everyone's lives, we have to bring them back. Do you hear me?" Li Jinyan, who had always been as calm as ice, said the last "do you hear me" in a flat tone. He did not even raise his voice much. However, there was an unstoppable sharpness in it. It was cold, like an arrow that had shot straight into everyone's hearts, leaving a deep impression on all the water ghosts. Li Jinyan had to bring the people back. He also had to bring back the lives of his comrades. It had not been easy for the Storm Commandos to get to where they were today. Every water ghost was a drop of the country's blood, sweat, and tears. Nothing could happen to the experts and students. Nothing could happen to the interpreters. Similarly, nothing could happen to the comrades who were with him day and night. He had brought them out in one piece, so he had to bring them back to the country in one piece. Li Jinyan arrived at the Combat Command building for less than 2 hours. At 2:17 a.m., the team and the 12 water ghosts boarded the plane to the coast of Labagarovi. This time, it was not a transfer flight, but a direct flight. He left the country overnight. Yi Qian, who was in the University of Science and Technology of China, was sleeping. When Li Jinyan arrived at the coast of Labagarovi, Yi Qian was fighting with the students of Luji. The first simulated battle was to reclaim the mountain. The AC point was the first line of defense of the invading party, Shaluzi. There were continuous trenches, many bunkers, machine gun bunkers, and iron wire barricades. Between the first line of defense and the second line of defense, there were also independent machine gun points and fortified strongholds. It was obvious that the invaders had strengthened the defenses of the first and second lines of defense. As the recipient of a medicine, if Yi Qian wanted to lead his troops to take down the mountain, they would have to take down the first and second lines of defense and destroy the enemy's bunkers and machine gun bunkers in one fell swoop. If this is a normal battle, we can just send out the artillery. Our field of vision is good, which provides our artillery with favorable conditions to attack. On the screen, Yi Qian's figure appeared before the eyes of Lu Ji, the leaders of the University of Science and Technology of China, the military leaders, and the instructors of the two universities. The young female student calmly analyzed the layout of the battlefield and controlled the situation. In between the lines of defense, the invaders have deployed a large number of machine guns to block our attack. With such a large defensive position, without the support of artillery, we will have to pay a heavy price. Therefore, I will send 3 battalions and an artillery team to enter from here. The laser pointer pointed at the three-dimensional love of the mountain that appeared on screen. She pointed at a mountain pass. This is the weakest point of the invaders. I will attack from the rear flank and coordinate with the front flank. We will attack from both sides and eliminate the second line of defense first. The female student's voice was very clear. Even though she only appeared on the screen and was not standing in front of them, the leaders who were sitting and watching the simulation could feel a murderous aura that came from the battlefield. Chapter 42:26. By the time she finished explaining the deployment, the leaders of the University of Science and Technology of China were already smiling. The University of Science and Technology of China was very confident that they would win this battle. Lu Ji's leader's expression was a little serious. The battle commander sent by the National Science and Technology of China looked young, but was very experienced in battle. After Lu Ji finished the deployment, the National Science and Technology Conference had 15 minutes to consider before accepting the battle. This way, Lu Hui's side actually had an extra 15 minutes to adjust the battle. The result: in less than 3 minutes after Lu Ji finished the deployment, the National Science and Technology Conference immediately accepted the battle and began the corresponding battle deployment. This imperceptibly made Lu Ji's students feel pressured. Even if they discovered the problem now and the National Science and Technology Conference had already deployed the battle, they could not change it. Just like now, if the National Science and Technology Conference did not immediately start the battle deployment, with Lu Ji's ability, he would definitely find the weak spot within 15 minutes and adjust it accordingly. Unfortunately, it was already too late. From a moment the National Science and Technology Conference accepted the battle, they did not give Lu Ji another chance to look at the entire battle deployment. They found the weak spot and started the simulation battle. Lu Ji's leader's expression was very serious. This time, the National Science and Technology Conference had a high chance of winning. After Yi Qian finished the deployment, the simulation battle immediately started. She was no longer on the screen, only smoke and the sound of cannonballs and bullets. Yi Qian, who disappeared from the screen, stood beside the sand table. She and the other 2 staff officers began the next step of the attack. After taking down the first and second lines of defense, we have to occupy this place. She picked up a small plastic red flag with the number 511 written on it and placed it on a small hill. Occupy the position on Highland 511 and then place the cannon team here to kill the invaders in all aspects. Force the back here. A small red flag with the number 513 written on it was placed on a small hill. At that time, the entire sand table layout would become the cannon team on Highland 511 against the invaders on Highland 513. This battle would be considered as a victory. Even though the entire battle situation was a simulation, the sound of cannonballs and bullets was so real that it was as if they were in a real battle. It made the leaders who were watching the entire battle look solemn. It was as if they were watching it live. Pa, pa. The sound of the computer keyboard was heard. The entire simulation battle entered a white-hot stage. Lu Ji students had cold sweat trickling down their foreheads, especially the student who was in charge of the battle. His brows were tightly furrowed as he stared at the entire battle. He stood motionless in front of the screen, observing the entire battle. The first simulated battle ended, and the reclaiming side won. They occupied Highland 511 and forced the invaders to retreat to Highland 513. Then, they launched a reaping battle, and the invaders lost. A student beside him saw that the battle had been decided. He said to the student in charge of the battle, "The enemy's commander is Yi Qian. I participated in the tournament with her before and have seen her abilities. She was very powerful and meticulous. In the end, she blocked the provocations of the students from Korea and Japan. She even ruthlessly stepped on the faces of the students from the 2 countries. At that time, we only had admiration for her." This was one of the students who had participated with Yi Qian and the other 16 students in the International Military Academy tournament organized by Monfei. After witnessing Yi Qian's prowess, he had warned their battle commanders not to be too careless. If they were careless, they would lose everything. During the simulation battle between Yi Qian and the students from the National University of Science and Technology, Shuku Village was not very peaceful. 2 strangers entered the village and asked if there was a middle-aged woman named Hong Mei in the village. Chapter 42:27. Shuku Village was remote and didn't have many tourist resources. After entering the 21st century, the young people in the village started to go out to work. Soon after, the elders also left the mountains to work in the big cities to earn money. Nowadays, life in the village was getting better day by day. The villagers' knowledge was also increasing day by day. Even their vigilance had changed drastically. In particular, Shuku village was a village close to a military base. Every year, the villagers would have countless information security conferences. In terms of vigilance, the villagers in Shuku village were even more vigilant than the residents in town. Looking at the two strangers who suddenly came to the village to ask about people, Uncle Hai, who was being questioned, stared at the two strangers with vigilance and directly replied, "I don't know." Hongmei, there were many names in the village. Hongmei, Xiumei, Chiumei. There were many of them. The older generation liked to give names that sounded good, but they didn't know many words. They would give names that sounded good. There were many names like Mei, Hongmei, Wen, and Li. Moreover, they knew that it wasn't a good thing for strangers to come into the village to ask about people. They had to be vigilant at all times and couldn't speak carelessly. Carelessly speaking would harm people. If they weren't careful, they would become traitors. Most of the villagers who stayed behind were old. They had worked in the fields for their entire lives. They didn't like outsiders, and they didn't like strangers intruding into their lives. Without waiting for the strangers to finish, Uncle Hai said stiffly, "Hurry up and leave. There's no one in our village called Hongmei. Go to the neighboring village and ask." "Big brother, we're here to look for our former comrades. Think about it again. Is there a woman who's our age in the village who used to be a soldier? I'm 43 today. This is my wife." The stranger who asked the question was well-dressed. He was wearing a suit and black leather shoes. He even had a briefcase in his hand. He looked like an intellectual. His wife, on the other hand, was wearing a dark red velvet jumpsuit and a thin, milky white sweater. She had a gentle temperament, just like a teacher. Uncle Hai didn't care. Without even thinking, he picked up the hoe and walked out of the paddy field. He casually plucked the two leeches that were sucking on his calf and used the hoe in his hand to cut them in half. Blood flowed from the edge of the field into the green grass. The two halves of the leeches were still twisting and struggling. The middle-aged woman was frightened and took a step back. Her eyes revealed a look of disgust. When Uncle Hai saw this, he snorted and picked up the hoe again. He walked barefooted through the mud and stopped talking to the two of them. What comrade in arms? Did he think that they had never seen a comrade in arms before? A few days ago, a group of soldiers on a long training course ran past their village. The villagers' unwillingness to cooperate made the two people, who had finally found them, a little anxious. The old man had instructed the husband and wife to find out Hong Mei's residence and personal information. They could not return empty-handed. Since this person couldn't do it, he would just have to find someone else. Find a woman and give her some money. The middle-aged woman came up with an idea. Money could make the devil turn millstones. She did not believe that there were no peasant women in such a remote and desolate place. There were definitely people who were greedy for money. However, they had been alerted by the various security conferences in the army, especially when they saw that some news had been leaked. Even if it was just a small piece of news, as long as it was related to the army, there was no difference between big and small. If they were not careful, they would be sentenced or something. Even if they were greedy for money, they knew that it would be useless if they did not have the life to spend it. Chapter 42:28. Annie Chio took the 100 yuan and pointed out a bunch of red plum blossoms. She even mentioned the red plum blossoms in the neighboring village and spoke a bunch of local Mandarin. She even brought the two of them to the two red plum blossoms in Shuka village. When she sent the two strangers away, Annie Chio even smiled and said, "Come often when you're free." After spending almost half a day in the village, they didn't find anything. Instead, they paid 100 yuan and didn't even drink tea. The two of them didn't look as good as when they first arrived. They'd spent money and they did see the red plum blossoms, but it wasn't the red plum they were looking for. The middle-aged woman didn't have any hope. "We've already gone to 3 villages. If we still can't find anything, we'll have to go back to the capital." The old man has high hopes. "If we can't find anything, we won't be able to report back to the old man." The middle-aged man held the blurry photo in his hand. It was a black and white group photo from the 60s. It was taken in 1979, and it had been 24 or 5 years. The photo itself was blurry and the faces were blurred. Even if the people in the photo appeared, they wouldn't be able to recognize who was who. After leaving Shuku village, the two of them continued to ask around in the surrounding villages. Andy Chio, who took the money but didn't do anything, ran to Zhang Difu's house, who was still sitting in the village chief's seat. She quickly told the village chief, who had just returned home from farming, that strangers had entered the village and asked about a female soldier named Red Plum. There aren't many female soldiers in the village. Yi Girl is one, and Yi Girl's mother is another. But the names don't match. I thought it would be a waste not to take the 100 yuan, so I took the two of them to the first two households in the village and let them see red plum blossoms. Village Chief Zhang Difu's expression changed when he heard that Annie Chio took 100 yuan from someone else. But in any case, Annie Chio had pointed out the main point, so he didn't flare up. Although Annie Chio had never left the village, she was a shrewd person who knew which words to say first and which to say later. Otherwise, how could she have made Sun Dongxing stomp her feet in anger back then? She had a sharp tongue. There's a problem if anyone dares to say anything about Yi Girl and her mother. I won't say anything about you taking advantage of her. You're just a woman. But if you mess things up, I won't recognize anyone from the same village. Treason was such a big crime that the entire village would not be able to raise their heads for generations. Wherever they went, they would be pointed at and gossiped about. I need to call the army and let the higher-ups know that someone has entered the village again. With the army's propaganda work in place, the villagers of Shuku village, which was closest to the army, knew that something was wrong and immediately informed the army. Needless to say, with the cooperation of the villagers, they caught several groups of people who wanted to enter the mountains to take military photos. Commander-in-Chief Xia already knew about this even before the two strangers who inquired about Hong Mei left Fujian town. All information about Martyr Hong Mei had already been erased, and the village where she lived only knew Sun Xueqing, not Hong Mei. Even if they went to Martyr Hong Mei's maternal home with a group photo, no one knew that Hong Mei was Sun Xueqing. As for Martyr's Park, the photo had already been taken down. The name engraved on the tombstone was Martyr Hong Mei's grave. Even if they went to Martyr's Park, they wouldn't find anything. Although everything had been arranged, they still couldn't let their guard down. Since they had already investigated Shuku village, it was hard to guarantee that they would find more information. Chapter 42-29. For example, getting new information from Martyr Hong Mei's former comrades. All of these were possible. The military was trying their best to find Hong Mei's former comrades, especially the person who had passed on false information to Bureau Chief Kai and the others who had wanted to help Hong Mei. Back then, after this person had passed on the news of Yi Qian's drowning to Bureau Chief Kai and the others, he had lost contact with all his comrades. His whereabouts were still unknown. The military could not find this person through the household register, so they suspected that this person had changed his name and started a new life with a new identity. Either he was still in the country, or he had gone overseas. The country was so big, the world so big. Even if the military was as powerful as it would still be difficult to find someone who had appeared in public more than a decade ago. The two were no longer watched closely by the villagers, but by the scouts stationed deep in the mountains of Shuku village. They watched for 3 days straight, and only after seeing the two leave Fujian town empty-handed did the scouts return to their units. At this time, Yi Qian had finished 2 days of simulated combat with Lu Ji. She was the overall commander, so after the outcome was decided, she immediately started writing a report. Not only did she have to write a detailed analysis of the entire battle, she also had to point out where the simulation system was lacking, what advantages it had, and where it needed to be improved. Busy but fulfilling, this was Yi Qian's life at the military academy. The dormitory and classroom lights were turned off on time for bed. Yi Qian, who needed to write a report, went to the library with a few staff officers to write it out as soon as possible. They could not drag it out. Every day they delayed, meant another day of work. Lu Ji's vanguard encountered the reconnaissance team we sent out. If we want to take control of the battle, we have to see who reacts first and fires first. My reconnaissance team has been keeping their weapons on standby all this time, while the vanguard troops of the Lu army are in an advanced state and have not entered a standby state. The sovereignty of the encounter lies in who opens fire first and instantly attacks and suppresses the enemy in the most ferocious form. Whoever is likely to be the winner. And we won, while Lu Ji's vanguard lost. But we still made a big mistake. The vanguard was the vanguard, and the support team did not lock onto their position in time. So we lost the second half. In a corner of the library, Yi Qian printed out the topographic map he had drawn. The pencil slid slowly along the curved lines, first pointing out all the shortcomings of their side for the past 2 days. The 3 staff officers nodded from time to time as they listened and took notes. Another clerk recorded the discussion into text on the computer. A report was not something that could be written on a whim, especially a combat report. They had to first analyze the entire battle situation before they could publish the report. By the time Yi Qian and the others finished their analysis and looked up at the time, it was already past 1 in the morning. The library was rather quiet at 1 o'clock in the morning. There were 2 lights in the corner, but the surroundings were pitch black. It was so quiet that even if someone yawned, it would sound very loud. The sound of hurried footsteps was so loud that it was several decibels louder than during the day. Yi Qian and the others, who were tidying up, looked up at the library entrance. It was very dark there, so dark that one could only see rows of shelves with books. When the door opened, Yi Qian also stood up. He smiled at the students who were visibly holding their breaths and said, "It's a student from my dorm. You guys continue to tidy up. I'll go take a look." It was He Jing. She had just returned to school this afternoon. Chapter 42:30. He Jing and Su Wen had followed the instructors to attend a meeting at the provincial military base, so they did not participate in the actual combat simulation mission. It was already past 1 in the morning, yet they had rushed to the library. It was obvious that something urgent had happened. In a corner of the library, a few students joked, they've been classmates for 3 years. Yi Qian can tell who is who just by listening to their footsteps. Do you guys think she can tell who is who from the footsteps of the entire class? This was a joke. It was past 1 in the morning, the time when people were the most sleepy. They needed to relax a little and get their spirits up. Yi Qian is extraordinary. She might really be able to tell who is who. Hey, did you guys hear? A few days ago, a senior brother from our class came back. I heard that he was a famous figure in our military academy, just like Yi Jian. I heard from a freshman that Yi Jian fought with a senior brother who is also a famous figure. Surprisingly, Yi Jian didn't lose. He even forced that senior brother to the point where he couldn't fight back. When this student started a topic, the other 2 immediately became interested and nodded repeatedly. I heard. It's been spreading in our class these past few days. I also heard from them that Yi Jian's fighting skills were not taught by the instructor. All of them are the kind that can be fatal once they enter the arena. Yes, I heard about that too. The instructor said that Yi Qian's close combat skills were mega and mixed combat skills. If they really fought, even the instructor might not be a match for Yi Qian. After this student finished speaking, the other 2 students instantly fell silent. After a while, the student who started the topic put his hands on the table and whispered, "Do you guys still remember when Yi Qian came to report at the start of the semester? At that time, our military training was about to end. Yi Qian just came over. In the end, she stood in a military stance, did a forward kick, and passed all the standard military training. They were all third-year students. Even though it had been 3 years, their memories of the freshman year were still fresh in their minds. Thinking back, it felt like it had just happened yesterday. How could I not remember? I only got to know Yi Qian because of that lunch. At that time, I was wondering why he looked so much more militaristic than our 4th-year senior, who trained us. I was a few classes away from you, so I didn't see Yi Qian's performance when he came in. I only saw Yi Qian during the flag-raising ceremony. At that time, I thought the instructor was the flag-bearer. His military posture was as straight as a spear, and he looked very imposing. The clerk who was organizing the information did not join in. Although he heard what the students were discussing, he also wanted to say that the thing that left the deepest impression on him was when Yi Qian was shooting. His posture with the gun was even more accurate than the demonstration in the textbooks. Unfortunately, he did not have the time to join in on this common topic. He had to enter all the information into the computer. Tomorrow, Yi Qian would have to hand it over to the leader. Yi Qian had already seen He Jing. She did not turn on the lights and walked over directly. She even gave Yi Jing, who had hurriedly pushed the door open, a fright. Yi Jing calmed herself down. Panting, she whispered, "Quick, the department leader is looking for you. He said that there is something very urgent, and he wants you to go over. Put down all the work at hand, and don't waste any time." The department leader personally went to the dormitory to look for Yi Qian, but he did not find her. Therefore, she, Su Wan, and the department leader split up to look for Yi Qian. There were many places in the school for students to study at night. Sometimes, even a training hall would be open. Yi Qian usually went to 3 places at night: the field, the library, and the training hall. Chapter 42:31. Hearing this, Yi Qian's eyes darkened. She nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go over and let them know. It'll be quick." Their report was almost done. She had already pointed out the important points. All they needed to do was polish it a little more, remove the repetitive and unnecessary parts, and then it would be about done. She had to let the students, who had been working late into the night with her, know. When Yi Qian said that she had an urgent matter to attend to, the students immediately nodded and expressed that they would do a good job. Yi Qian gave them a few more instructions and highlighted 3 key points for discussion. Then she left with Yi Jing in a hurry. Why are they in such a hurry? Did something happen? Did something happen in their class? Something must have happened. If Yi Qian still has to rush over at this time, I'm afraid it's a little big. Let's not talk about Yi Qian for now. Even if something happens, we won't know. Come. Let's hurry up and go through the information in our hands again. Let's discuss the key points that Yi Qian highlighted and see if there's anything to add. Okay, let's hurry up. Let's see if we can finish by 3 in the morning. Fortunately, Yi Qian has finished analyzing all the key points. The progress is very fast, and we didn't waste any time. Otherwise, once she leaves, this report will definitely have a lot of flaws. The lights in the corner of the library were on. The 4 students were bent over their desks and immersed themselves in their work. Yi Qian almost ran all the way to the department leader's office. When the department leader, who had already returned to the office, heard her reporting from the door, he immediately said, "Come in quickly." When Yi Qian pushed the door open and entered, he saw the department leader holding the phone. With a solemn expression, he said, "Yi Qian is already here. I'll pass the phone to her now." It wasn't the department leader who was looking for Yi Qian. It was the military who was looking for Yi Qian. At 1:30 in the morning, Yi Qian didn't pack any luggage. He rushed into a car in camouflage pants and a short-sleeved shirt and headed to Lady Military Airport. The entire journey took 3 hours on the highway, and it took another hour or so to get to the Lady Military Airport. Yi Qian boarded a military plane at 6 in the morning and flew directly to the capital. In the capital, a flight to Libya was supposed to take off at 7:45 in the morning, but due to special reasons, it was delayed for an entire hour and took off at 8:45 in the morning. The plane did not take off on time. The airport had already made preparations, so it did not affect the departure of the subsequent flights. At 8:40, Yi Qian boarded the plane to Libya. She was alone. She only had a phone and the $500 that the military had given her when she boarded the plane. A cell phone, $500, and a student ID were all Yi Qian's luggage. He was also the only passenger who boarded the plane empty-handed. She sat in the first-class cabin. The flight crew knew that the flight was delayed because they were waiting for this girl in camouflage to board. After breakfast was served, the flight attendant carefully said, "Let us know if there's anything." Then, she left quietly. Yi Qian needed sleep. After breakfast, she asked for a thin blanket and an eye mask. She needed to get enough sleep during the 10-hour flight to Libya. This was because she entered combat mode immediately after she got off the plane. There was no buffer time at all. The translator, Yang Hung, went missing. Several professors from the National University of Science and Technology went missing. There was also an expert who went missing. They went missing when they were out at sea. The last thing the radar showed was a small island. Big Brother led the storm commandos to the island. They found the missing ship, but they didn't find the missing people. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.